Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jams and TV podcast.
Where we talk about television.
Television. Yeah, okay, so
They ask you how you are, you just have to say
hard
that you're
cut.
fine.
Welcome back, everyone, to Jen and Jake's Bizarre Affray, the competitive recommendation show between two of the best Kentucky Thembos in the game, Jen and Jake, where we recommend things to each other and listen to some new music and talk about all of it together. But first, we have some things we need to talk about that have been going on in local music land because I went to Louisville's great Bourbon and Beyond Music Festival. Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to every artist that I saw, along with a quick note that Bourbon and Beyond, like for those of you that know the history but maybe didn't see what they were doing this year, changed the entire like floor layout of what the setup is for the music festival. So there were four stages now, where there are usually two. And overall, it just made it a really great experience where we got to listen to a lot of really great music that I'm gonna rattle off right now. So shout out to Old 97's TV on the Radio, Cage the Elephant,
Ooh.
Alabama Shakes, my favorite show of the whole weekend.
Ooh.
Muscadine Bloodline, Colby Calais, Karangbin, Fish. I've never listened to a Fish song in my life, but I had a
Wow.
great time at that set.
I've heard great things about their concerts, actually.
Yeah, it's a big part of their band's culture that the live show are kind of the epitome of what they do. 49 Winchester, Flatland Cavalry, second time seeing these guys. I love them. I don't know how, but they found me. Third Eye Blind, The Hold
Ooh.
Steady, Dawes, Sammy
Ooh.
Ray and the Friends, Johnny Blue Skies, aka Mr. Sturgill Simpson. Amazing jam band set at the end of the night from Sturgill.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Dashboard Confessional, Foreigner, who Foreigner just announced that their lead singer is retiring after 20 years, but they
I
brought
I
out
I didn't know they were active. My
yeah,
God.
they are still active and touring. They brought out a new guy who's going to be their new lead singer, and they shared the stage together. Great fucking show. Really great time. Daniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, Goo Goo Dolls, and Noah Khan, all of which I saw over the weekend, all of which I loved. I had a stellar time with. Me and Renee had a great weekend seeing all these bands and just enjoying being around people and getting hot and sweaty and listening to some good rock music. Jake, you went to a different concert in the period between our
Yeah.
last recording and this one.
I went to Louisville myself. I went to the Palace, which is a wonderful, cozy little venue compared to the concerts that I've been in the past. But Ree and I went to go see Lucy Dacus. We have been exuberant in our praise with Miss Dacus on the podcast in the past. Her album Home Video in particular is one of my favorites. I know one of Riley's favorites. That was one we were going nuts for when it came out. Still absolutely adore that album. And she dropped a new album this year. And honestly, I kind of waited to listen to it until the last minute just because that album did not really land with any kind of critical response at all, really. It was just kind of like, yeah, it's good. And then everybody kind of moved on. And I was just like, well, you know what? I'll wait until the concert is within view and then I will listen to it. Honestly, a tiny mini review of Forever is a Feeling. That's a very good album.
Yeah.
It's a very spare, very minimal record, but I really enjoy the usage of strings on that album. It actually reminded me a lot of something that did hit streaming recently, funnily enough, which is the technical self-titled prelude to Fleetwood Mac's career, which is Buckingham and Nicks. Their like really like original sort of set of demos. That was kind of what it reminded me of. And I really liked how it translated into the live setting. Lucy as a performer was really awesome to see because all of the Forever is a Feeling songs that she performed were these sort of spare string laden, very like careful arrangements, and just like a very well mic'd, very like the acoustics in the room were like really, really great. And it was exactly what I expected that to be. But she kind of bounced between that and some of her more classic stuff, you know, stuff from home video, stuff like Night Shift, for instance, which basically got performed twice because we encored her and just did the chorus like over and over and over and over again because it was fucking awesome. She married a very cute lesbian couple while we were there. She's been doing that like every single stop along the tour for anybody who asks. And we had a nice little moment on stage. It was very, very cute. But I loved how she bounced between like her old stuff that isn't her current Forever is a Feeling stuff was like just super rock heavy. Like it was just like it was a show that was so dynamic and so full of different tempos, different energies. And you wouldn't necessarily expect that for a performer or an artist like Lucy, but she has clearly put a lot of thought into these shows, how they have a kind of ebb and flow to them that makes the live version of it really just wonderful to witness. I had a spectacular time. I did see her technically when we went to go see Taylor Swift in Nashville because Julia
Boy
and
Genius was
Lucy
playing,
and
yeah.
yeah, Boy Genius
Yeah.
got to play some of their stuff from the record. So it was, I mean, it was just as invigorating as hearing that. Like I heard plenty of songs that where I was just like, huh, huh. Ah, though I will say it was also like it wasn't just the music that had a kind of emotional variance in it. It was the lyricism and what albums are about. Like one of the things I find really refreshing about Forever is a Feeling is that it's very often these kinds of artists and these kinds of albums are often deified for their ability to kind of spill their guts, and it's like it's a really dark kind of like, oh, you know, these songwriters talking about sad subjects and breakups and stuff. And I kind of liked it. Forever is a Feeling is just an album about how nice and wonderful it is to be in love with somebody. Like it's just it's refreshing to have somebody like Lucy mine that topic in that way, and you don't have to see, like, it just proves how great of an artist she is, that she doesn't need to lean on these established tropes, that she can just sort of chart her own course, do her own thing. And other than maybe the production being a little bit too spare in some of the B-side of that album, I really enjoyed it, and I absolutely loved her in the live performance. There was also a band that performed before her that I cannot remember the name of, but they kind of brought the house down. It was kind of like a mixture of Always and Snail Mail, if I had
Oh,
to
that's right. You
identify.
texted in the Discord about this. Let me see if I
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah, yeah.
find
Go
it
back and see
so I
that
can
just so
shout
I
them
can.
out.
They're a smaller band, but they were really cool. They really knew how to put on a great live performance.
Band is called Slow Pulp.
Slow Pulp. That was yeah, that's right. I remember joking that it would be funny if they just came out and performed Pulp songs at half speed, but alas, you don't get everything you want. But Louisville, the hip hopinest place for all of your cool musical acts, I suppose. Finally, I got to see a concert this time.
Jake's first concert review for the pod.
Yeah!
Funnily enough, I'm going to have one for two for the next episode, depending on how we
Damn!
schedule it. As
Y'all motherfuckers be busy!
I'm seeing Turnstile, Mannequin Pussy, and Jane Remover this weekend in Chicago.
I remember you talking about seeing that show on when we were recording like a month or so ago,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. So
I
that's
was
coming
just
up
like,
this
that's gonna
week.
bring the fucking house down.
And then we're seeing Magdalena Bay 2 weeks from now in Nashville. So depending on when we record the next episode, I will have one or two concert reviews for the next episode. Speaking of two new things, we have two new albums to talk about
Hmm.
this. The first, let's start with Lonely at the Top from New York rapper Joey Badass. And
Star of Mr. Robot, Joey Badass.
yeah, guest star on Mr. Robot, Joey Badass, which me being a sheltered white boy when that show was coming out was how I found out he existed.
I had listened to All American Badass by the time he had showed up on Mr. Robot, thankfully, so I can claim some bit of street cred for that.
So Joey Badass has had a really interesting career. He is a
Hmm.
guy who, to me in this day and time, could still still legitimately claim the title of King of New York just because of the consistency of his past records. People like him, people like West Side Gun, people like certain members of the ASAP mob have all been putting out really good shit for a really long time and really repping the East Coast, especially in a time where in the past couple of years, thanks to releases like Kendrick Lamar and Clips and Tyler the Creator, the West Coast definitively has a leg up in the culture.
Hmm.
But Joey made a very interesting start to this album cycle when he started a beef with some of the underlings of TDE.
Like
Basically,
five people at this point.
well, basically what happened was that back in January, shortly after the release of GNX, he announced that he was going to return and put out an album this year. And that started with the song The Ruler's Back. And he put out a couple of other tracks, which basically provoked a bunch of responses out of TDE guys like Daylights, Ray
Yep.
Vaughn, who Joey got in an extended back and forth exchange with on the mic. And as this was happening, I felt like Joey was punching a little above his weight here.
Yeah.
I didn't really see any reason, as a guy who's been following Joey's music for almost a decade, I didn't really see a reason why Joey needed to go after these guys, but it felt more like a true embrace of a competitive spirit of hip hop type of thing, especially with some very light jabs at Kendrick Lamar for basically raising a bunch of fail sons that can't compete. That was essentially the gist of it.
Hmm.
There was a Red Bull cipher that he did with Big Sean not too long ago, where he addressed the beef, but basically put it to rest by saying, like, oh, there was nothing really personal there. I just kind of wanted to see if anybody would respond. And they
Hmm.
did. And so I did what I did to Ray Vaughn and da 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 da. But like, there's no hard feelings. And I kind of appreciated that, especially given the stakes of the last major hip hop beef that we endured, which felt like, Todd in the Shadows made a great point, which is if Drake keeps making music, what then? Like, if we all declare Kendrick Lamar the winner, but we just let Drake keep making music, did Kendrick Lamar really win? And that is a good question to ask that we don't really have the answer to yet until this whole Iceman arc resolves itself. But Joey announces this album Lonely at the Top, which sets itself up to be this kind of, yes, I'm at the top of my game. Yes, I'm declaring myself the king of New York. Yes, I'm going to get all my big New York buddies to come on here. We had a feature list with people like, again, West Side Gun, ASAP Ferg, Ty Dolla Sign, some of his people that are on, what's the name of his label? I looked it up earlier and then I forgot the name of it. Pro Era. Some of the Pro Era guys are on a posse cut on this. And then you also have features on this album from people like Absol and Rhapsody.
Rhapsody.
So this could have been a very big album for Joey. And I kind of hate to say that after waiting for so long for Joey to drop the classic, because I kind of have issues with every single one of his albums, right? Before the
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love as like an early conscious rap album, well, conscious by 2010's standards. One of the first albums that feels like it's taking heavy cues from things like To Pimp a Butterfly, but that album isn't as consistent as I would like it to be. And I would
Hmm.
say the same for things like All American Badass and his previous mixtape 2000, which
Hmm.
all have great conceptual hooks to them, but just kind of miss a few important steps that keep them from classic territory. And so I'm like, okay, is this it? This is going to be the one. Is this going to be the one? Because Joey, these diss tracks were promising, right? And so seeing that he was taking this angle to this album, I thought, okay, if this is going to be the big definitive statement about how he's the guy, maybe he can stick the landing on this. I will say, I want to give major compliments to the first half of this album because
Yeah.
especially from Dark Aura to Brooklyn's Finest, I would say that this album does a pretty good job of sticking to its guns about what it's trying to be. The problem is that once you get past the Pro Era posse cut, the second half of this album kind of completely falls apart for me. On a conceptual level, it's a complete misfire that Joey recedes into this, but actually I'm kind of sad and all this stuff is kind of hard for me to do bag. And then the songs aren't as good as the first half to begin with. Like if you really dedicated yourself to a mid album shift in tone like this. I could see it really working, but the fact is that after Brooklyn Finest, these songs just aren't as good. And Joey is not able to make a consistent second half out of, actually, this rap shit is really hard, you guys. After spending 8 months being like, no, I want to come back on the scene. I want to crash in and I want to challenge the West Coast for, who really is the top of the game. The second half of this album just doesn't work for me. I don't know. What did you think? How do you feel about this? What's your past with Joey Badass? I know you guys reviewed 2000s
Mhm.
semi positively, pretty positively. So where are you coming into this? Takeaway on the sequencing of this whole thing. What can we get out of Lonely at the Top?
Structurally speaking, I completely, honestly, like a lot of your context is stuff I can just kind of hit Control C on. But like, I've been listening to Joey Badass pretty avidly since 2017, just because All American Badass was like a pretty critically revered album. And I remember throwing that on and listening to that at the exact same time I was listening to shit like Flower Boy, for instance. And, I still go back to songs on there, like, Super Predator, for instance. And like, I think that like his breakout debut mixtape 1999, like that is an incredible mixtape, especially when you count how old he was when he released it for free back in 2012. Like that is one of the best hip hop mixtapes I think of the 2010s, and I feel like that's not a controversial statement to make at all. But I have kind of had small issues with all of his projects since then. Like I think Before the Money is like his most solid, well-rounded album. But like albums like 2000, they either have a bit too much fat on their bones, or they don't fully commit to a conceptual angle that they have, or there's some aspects of him as a performer that he doesn't fully lay into or fully capitalize on. And I've just been kind of waiting to see if like, oh, maybe he is capable of a lot better than what I feel he has been delivering on the album front, just because he is a very technically gifted rapper and a very like intelligent rapper. Like I would describe Joey Badass as a very smart person when it comes to how he constructs a rhyme and how he constructs a song. And that's why Lonely at the Top is such a weird experience for me, is that like not only is it kind of odd in how it does a, side B structural shift, I just think that the sequencing of this album in general is so lopsided and strange. What is Lonely at the Top doing at the end of this album and not the beginning? What
Yeah.
is songs like I don't understand why you would put or a song like Speeding Through the Rain or even Underwater before a song like that, because it's so obviously something that's laying contextual groundwork that would emphasize the meaning that's within those songs. And like I do kind of agree that he relies a bit on the, oh, we got to shift to the down tempo sort of mood change in order to deliver a song that feels a little bit more like you have to lock into what he's saying and just be like, oh, this is the part where it really feels like he's really trying with his pen. But then that makes you think like, oh, well, then what was the rest of the album for necessarily? And it's not like I don't think that there isn't evident skill on here. There's lots of moments where, Joey on the first half of this album is, breaking out flows that are right out of like, Biggie flows, essentially. It's just like he wants to be the king in New York, and he's talking about Jay, he's talking about the greats on here. And it's not like, I hate doing this thing where it's just like you have to drop this insanely conceptual album to prove your metal. And it's like you don't necessarily have to drop like a conceptual record in order to do that, but you have to drop a record that feels like it has a bit more of a point behind it. There are just so many songs on here where it feels like they are incidental to the overall point of what this is going for. And there are songs that I think like Superflee, for instance, is just kind of a song where it feels a bit too repetitive for what it's going for. And even songs like Ready to Love are just like, there's no one part of this song that I think is bad, but like when you mix the chorus and the verses, there's like a tonal disparity that it feels actively clumsier. Like it feels as though Joey spread himself maybe a little too thin during this album cycle and just ended up releasing a product that's like it's a 40-minute album, it's 11 songs, and I can't really say I walked away with a takeaway from this other than, yeah, this proves to me what I already know, but like it didn't even have like 1999 wasn't necessarily, or not 1999, 2000 wasn't necessarily something that I was over the moon about. But this album doesn't necessarily have a survivor's guilt on it, where it's just like, whoa, this blew me away. Like he does get real in some moments. There are moments where he talks about, having a son and like trying to live up to the expectations of being a father, stuff like that, where it's like that's good content to mine. Like that's what people have been doing this year. Earl just did that. Tyler kind of sort of just did that. Clips just did that. But it also feels like a flash in the pan on here. It's like there are moments of saliency, there are moments of good points. Like I was looking forward to Still, the song with Rhapsody and Absol, so much. And it's good. It's a good song.
It's okay.
But like first of all, gross underutilization of Rhapsody.
Do
Like
you know how badly I wanted a full verse from Rhapsody on this song and how
right?
disappointed I was when I
How
didn't get it?
how do you not enlist Rhapsody to give you a full verse? Like literally one of the best lyrical rappers working today. Just like a fantastic catalog of music, and that's what people know her for. And just like Absol is like wiping the floor with Joey and Rhapsody's inclusion on here, and even then it's good, but it's nothing I haven't heard these performers do before. It was an experience that left me shockingly cold because I didn't pay close attention to the whole, Joey Badass beef, but I was just like, it feels like he's gearing up to do something. Like it feels like he's gearing up to drop something or say something, and it's like I'm ready for this because it feels like this is a moment that Joey Badass's career has needed maybe for a long time because yeah, people have been watching him move for a while. He has not been able to take himself, at least in my eyes, from the B tier of modern rappers to the A tier. And I know he's capable of that. I know he is. It's just weird that we're still not quite there. He's got the technical talent. He really does. He's got the pen for it. It just doesn't feel like that was the priority here.
Yeah, I really wish that this had committed more to being a sort of proving ground for Joey as a mainstay of the genre.
Agree.
And ultimately, especially with the way that the second half of this album just kind of drops off in energy, something that I talked about when we talked about the JID album, but the way
Mm,
that it's executed here is a lot less impactful because the movements to a more down-tempo, low-key jazz rap approach to talking about the kind of newfound struggles that Joey's been dealing with since the days of 2000. It doesn't hit the same. It doesn't have the same specificity as something like Nobu off of the JID album, you know?
correct.
And this album does have its highs, right? I loved
Yeah.
Brooklyn's Finest. I love Swank White with West Side Gun. I loved ASAP Ferg's verse on High Roller. And again, the Absol verse on this is absolutely worth a listen. But it just doesn't feel like the project that Joey said he wanted to make back in
Yeah.
January. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like we've got so many modern rappers and rappers that are kind of within Joey's circuit who are looking to prove themselves on this level. I mean, Jid is a great example of somebody who I really feel like just kind of went at this approach and 100% walked away successful with one of debatably the best hip hop albums of the year in a year where competition for that title is really fucking impressive. I'm pretty sure my favorite song on here is probably like Speeding Through the Rain, and it's still a song where it's like it's still kind of committing that sin of, relying on its tonal change to kind of invoke and to some extent insist upon itself in some respect. And it's just like I know that this dude is basically like I know that he wants to prove that he is the king of New York, and it's from a combination of the fact that he is good at what he does and he has a good catalog of music, and also who's fighting him for that right now? Like honestly, who is contender? Who is the contender there? Because I can't think of anybody off the top of my head.
West Side Gun, maybe, but the two of them
And
seem to have such a good rapport that they would never actually try to
yeah,
compete for it.
and West Side Gun feels like it's not as though he's like staying in his lane, but it's just like it feels like West Side Gun has carved out a niche for himself kind of within that Griselda scene that they're not really concerned with like they kind of feel like they like being in the relative underground. Like, they're rappers that in order to know about, you probably have to be like online or really immersed in the culture to actually like know about. And Joey's like a little bit more popular than that. And like, I don't know. I want this dude to be able to drop the album that I know he's had in him like for 8 years now. And this is just not quite that record. It's a thoroughly competent assembly of songs, but as an album, as a statement, it just doesn't feel like comparing it to GNX is probably poor form, but like the point with that album really was that it was like, this isn't about the beef. This isn't about anything. This is about me and where I'm at right now. And it's not even necessarily thoroughly conceptual. It's just like, I'm going to drop an album that has enough bangers to give me longevity. I'm going to put my pen to work so that you have enough to dig into, but it's not necessarily going to be super duper deep or anything. It's well rounded. It has all of these strengths to it, and it doesn't feel like this album has, the gas in the tank to be able to suit multiple purposes.
Yeah, and GNX also fulfills a narrative purpose in the beef, right? Where it's not just
Hmm.
Kendrick establishing moral superiority, like the greatest trick he pulled was making fun music that people want to listen to all the time.
And not mentioning Drake one time. And it's crazy because like it's such an easy layup conceptually speaking, because it's like, again, who is fighting Joey for the King of New York right now? It's nobody. It's nobody. He could make that claim so easily, and he'll kind of throw reference to that, but like, I don't know. I need him to maybe work with a producer, maybe a consistent producer that will maybe emphasize his strengths a little bit better. Like work with somebody who can handle some of these like brighter, glamorous sort of New York style beats, or, somebody who can challenge you a little bit more, like a Mad Lib, for instance, or like you know, I feel like Joey could work well with somebody like Exile of Blue and Exile. I feel like that sort of jazz rap upload, I'm begging Joey to drop Below the Heavens is what I'm asking for. Is that like that album is an album I know that Joey has in him, and I want that to happen so bad.
Final verdict. It's a soft thumbs down, but I think it is a thumbs
Yeah,
down for me.
if I can't just wholly abstain and drop a whatever, then it's
I
like
don't,
it's
let's
a
not set that
soft.
precedent. Let's not
Nah,
start
you're
doing
right.
this.
You're right. Like we committed to not having half stars in our rating system, so we have to commit. And I'll say it is in fact a soft thumbs down for me.
And this is easily my least favorite Joey project. So just from that
Oh,
alone, I feel like I can give it that
easily.
pretty soft thumbs down. On the other hand, our other album for this week is the new record from Big Thief, Double
Hmm.
Infinity. We've both got a kind of history with Big Thief. When Dragon New Warm Mountain came out, that was something that like you guys and I listened to as well. I appreciate Riley a whole lot for giving me a shout out in that best of video after I told him some feelings I was having about that album because yeah,
Hmm.
Dragon New Warm Mountain, listening to that for the first time while driving through the countryside to go see my parents at Thanksgiving was like one of the best experiences I've had with music this decade in general. And as far as the band's timeline goes, we've also had the latest solo album from Adrian Lenker, Bright Future, to talk about. And so when Big Thief announced that they were coming back with Double Infinity, I really wasn't sure what to expect because, you never know where a band is going to go after the big ambitious double album.
Yep.
And so sitting down and listening to Double Infinity was a really interesting experience. Jake, how did you feel about Bright Future? Because I don't think you guys reviewed that on the show.
We did not get to cover that, but like I discovered after I listened to Dragon New Orm Mountain, and like I had heard a Big Thief album before that, but it was, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but
Was
basically
it
like
Masterpiece?
it wasn't Masterpiece. It was one of the albums. It was one of two albums they dropped in the same year. And I listened to it at the time. And that album is super low key, super subtle. And like Riley basically told me straight up, he was just like, you could not have picked a worse album to get into this band with. Like, this is a deep cut favorite that you should probably save for later. Like, if you get into this band right now at the time, he was like, like listen to something like either Masterpiece or Two Hands. And I was going to get to those, but then Dragon New Orm Mountain came out, and that really blew me away. Like, that is still an album where I would say like that is among some of my favorite releases of this decade, and like certainly up there when it comes to double albums that have been released this decade as well. It's just so many colorful songs, so much great lyricism, instrumentation. It's a warm, cozy, nostalgic album that you feel alive when you listen to music like that. And so then I went back and listened to albums like Two Hands, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to just say that these guys are one of the best active bands like working today. Like, Adrian Lenker is a phenomenal lyricist, an incredible vocalist, and the band behind her is every bit as impressive as she is. Buck Meek on guitar is literally always doing some wild, awesome shit, and their production never puts a foot wrong. And then I listened to some of Adrian's solo stuff like Abyss Kiss, which is honestly one of my favorite singer-songwriter records of like the last 10 years too. I adore the more spare, more contemplative side that this band has. And then Bright Future comes along, and that is a little bit less minimal than her stuff previously, but it's no less impressive. It's no less interesting. It's no less thoughtful. And then there was also the EP that she dropped where she was raising money for the children of Palestine. And like that record is also fucking fantastic. I think that album may be something that I enjoyed slightly more than Bright Future now that I think about it. I still listen to all of this stuff on the regular. And so naturally, I was excited just because, Big Thief are one of those big indie blogosphere bands that are popular right now, and everybody's talking about them. And it was weird just because nobody really mentioned this album when it came out. Like, I heard radio silence compared to Dragon New Warm Mountain. And I was
Same.
like, is this the inevitable, like, this is not necessarily a bad album, but it's just a record that occupies a less defined niche in their trajectory. And after listening to Double Infinity, that's maybe partially true, but this to me is very, very, very obviously the album that the band makes while touring. Like, this is a tried and true rock album, sort of subtype to me of an album that's maybe made with less restraints, a less conceptual angle. There's a looseness to it. There's a kind of freedom to it that only comes from when artists are kind of coasting off of the existing high that they're writing, where maybe they're not taking a whole lot of risks, but they're doing what they're known for exceptionally well. And that's what Double Infinity is to me. It is Big Thief being Big Thief very, very successfully. And I will say that I would say that if you want to know what Big Thief sound like, just as an outsider, just because indie rock is such a wide umbrella term these days, it's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like, if I say you're an indie rock band, you could sound like anything from Slow Dive to fucking like Sturgill Simpson. Like, who even knows what that means anymore? But like, Big Thief to me are a combination of the songwriting, lyrical, and vocal sensibilities of a band like Fleetwood Mac in their prime and instrumental, and also like have the improvisational, wild, kind of out there instrumental, sort of like risky sort of vibe that like Neil Young and Crazy Horse would have in their heyday. And you combine these two things, and that's more or less Double Infinity. It is like an album of songs that feel like the structure obeys the whim of the instruments. It's not about locking these people into songs. It is about seeing what music just kind of emanates from them. And that sounds kind of hippy dippy, but like you listen to this album and it feels relaxed. You are listening to musicians and writers who are incredible talents at what they do, and they're just kind of letting everything breathe. Like there's stuff on here too that like this kind of implies that this has a sort of a vague improvisational quality that I alluded to, but there is no less care put into stuff like the production. Like again, Buck Meek's guitar tones on this is the best a guitar has sounded since the MJ Lenderman album that came out last year. Like, they are doing some wild shit with these tones. I have never heard a guitar sound exactly the way that it does on songs like Incomprehensible, on songs like All Night, All Day, or the title track on here. And frankly, I think this is a very sturdy album. It's got a lot of great sort of songwriting conceits. It's got lots of songs that feel like they are written as the band is on the move. There's a transient quality to it. And Lanker's lyricism as on point as it's ever been. There are so many stanzas from this album that stood out to me and just kind of made me sort of sit there and be like, damn, shit. Like she has that quality as a writer, man, where she'll talk about like she talks about on this album as like the idea, the concept of aging being a crystalline prism. And you're just kind of like, what does that even mean? And then you kind of like listen to her elaborate on the subject material, and you're just like, oh, I get it. Damn. And so, yeah, this is an album where I don't think it's going to have that many like insane career highlights. It's not going to be remembered as one of the band's best necessarily, but it is one that for a casual listen, just like you need a really solid record to put on a rainy day to just kind of have a little contemplative walk around your apartment or whatnot. This is an album that is going to do you just fine. I think that maybe the A side is a little bit stronger than the B side. I'm not super into the penultimate track, Happy With You. It's a little bit repetitive for my liking, but overall, yeah, this is just an album where it feels like everything is in its right place and it is a very successful version of what it aims to be, which is just kind of remind everyone what a Big Thief album is without necessarily being like, it's a double album and every song sounds completely different. It's more along the two hands kind of style of record where it's just like, here's a bunch of really good, cohesive songs.
Yeah, it's got a much more unified sound than Dragon
Hmm.
does, which gives it a very focused sense of pacing and gives it this kind of jam band feel between all these,
Yeah.
even in its like some of its sudden shifts in rhythm and tone you feel with the consistencies in the guitar tones or the consistencies in the kind of softness of the drums is a big feature of this album. Even when they're mixed pretty highly, they're very soft. They have a kind of staccato piano production. They have a kind of soft piano forte approach to them. And then you get into the lyrical content of songs like Incomprehensible and Words, and I think a big thing that this album goes for in terms of its thematic focus is that this is an album about not always being able to put words to feelings, right? That's
Yes.
very thoroughly what the second track Words is about, but that sentiment manifests in several places throughout the album, including in Happy With You, which, yeah, is this basically this refrain of these two phrases, happy with you, and something along the lines of why do I have to explain it? Why do I have to explain this to you? That captures this inability to articulate something that is so deeply felt that is, I mean, feels like it's a motivation for Linker to be a songwriter, to be a
Yeah.
lyricist, right? This inability to make feelings known in regular conversation manifests in songwriting, manifests in moments like Los Angeles, where we're talking about aging and we're just having this refrain that eventually builds into this beautiful layering of vocal harmonies. Oh
Mm.
man. Yeah, all night, all day. Man, loving to fuck someone you kind of hate does indeed suck, Adrian. Uh,
Like,
Sorry,
ah, man.
that's what I took from that song.
Nah, there's always an ephemeral quality to Adrian's writing that she is able to nail down concepts and just like things that sound a lot more esoteric when you're describing them, but when you're listening to them in the moment, it always makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
Like I really do believe in my heart of hearts that she is one of our best living songwriters. Like I would put her next to people who have been making music for the last 40 odd years. Like I would put her next to the John Darnielles of the world because there is just something so singular about her and her voice in general. I absolutely love. Like one of the Fleetwood Mac comparisons I come back to is the fact that I she always to me cannot escape sounding like Stevie Nicks with a twang. And there are that like I can't fathom many things that I like more than Adrian Lanker's singing voice in that particular mode because I mean again if you're going for the greats going for Stevie is a really solid trajectory to aim yourself at and frankly it's kind of like she feels like if if you put Stevie Nicks and Christine McVie into one person. She
Yeah.
has like the subtlety of McVie and like the songwriting sort of like acumen and bite and the sort of underrated quality that McVie brought to Fleetwood Mac, but also the kind of outspoken, pronounced, like I'm kind of unignorable presence that Nicks also had. And Buck Meek is clearly like Lindsey Buckingham on the guitar ass. It's so like if you haven't seen live performances of Big Thief, they tear shit up. Like you can listen to an album like this and it sounds, gentle and warm and crisp. And sometimes the guitar can get a little wild. But if you watch live performances, it's just like, whoa, these guys rock.
I love the concept of the double infinity as not an expanse, but a superposition, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
double
yeah, yeah.
infinity is not infinite possibility. It is, in fact, feeling stuck between, this is one of the ways that Linker explains it. I just have it written down. What's been lost and what lies waiting. It's
Mm,
about kind of feeling trapped between something that you know you need to let go of and something that you're not sure you're moving towards. There's a lot of sentiments on here about having to let go of things that you cherish and being unable to carry with you things that you want to take with you in the way that you immediately want to, like on the song like Grandmother, where instead
mm.
of being able to carry this memory, you have to do what they say on the refrain, right? Give it all to rock and roll, which, oh man, that refrain, one of the best musical moments of the year. I
Lands hard. It's great.
heavenly.
Absolutely. Like I too really like how the double infinity concept is like it's not a web of possibilities necessarily. It is, the idea of like it's something that Adrian writes about a lot is just the idea of time, the idea of the passage of time and the idea that, time is something that we perceive the way we perceive it because we are limited. There is an aspect of time that is fourth dimensional that we cannot fully understand. So it's like human beings are like flames, like you can sort of have your kind of wavering back and forth, but you're still remained rooted into the same place until you're snuffed out. And in a lot of instances, that would be an excuse for people to write a very existential and kind of like terrified album of just being like, oh God, I must surrender to the universe. But like Adrian puts it in a way that's like actually kind of comforting in a way that's like, no, just surrender yourself to the experience of life. Like you're going to have to, like, you don't hold the reins anyway, so let go. Like there's no point in trying to take control of what you cannot possibly grasp. And there is freedom in that.
Yeah, there's freedom in realizing the inevitability of entropy.
Yeah, yeah, basically.
That things will always be moving and you need to be moving with it, which as somebody that just got out of fucking grad school, oh boy, did I need to hear that this
Oh, I
week.
bet. Oh, I bet. Owie.
That resonated with me a whole lot the more that I sat and thought about it and wrestled with it. That's what I want to say about that.
God, COVID may have destroyed my job market, but I am glad I got out of college before that happened because I don't know if I could handle that existentially. So more power to you,
I had
sis.
to I had to learn how to be a teacher during the pandemic. I'll maybe talk about that experience in a better context one day, but whoo boy, I have some things to say about that experience.
Ow!
Anyway, let's put a cap on this. Big, 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 big thumbs up on Double Infinity. Love this album so
Yes,
much.
yes. Great stuff. Great stuff as always.
Very happy to review Big Thief with you because it's been a long time coming, us talking about this band.
Oh yeah, for
We
sure.
both really enjoyed Dragon New War Mountain since it came out, so this feels
Hmm.
like a big moment for us getting to talk about
Still,
these guys again.
Riley's album of the decade, if I'm remembering correctly, and very well earned spot. Like that's one of those albums where 10 years time in the next decade, hopefully it comes around. Haha. But like next decade, that is going to be one of the albums that I think about the most.
I certainly agree. That album's gonna be with me for a long time.
Speaking of profound experiences that are going to be with us for a long time, Jen.
I'm upset.
I
I'm
I
not
love how we're
even
not even trying to bury the lead here. It's just like, man,
well,
man.
okay. If you clicked on this video, you know that one of that Jake's pick for this episode was the 2004 anime Elfen Lied, which we had kind of discussed at the end of last episode as having come out at a very particular time where it could have a very significant impact. We've talked about this period before when we talked about
Hmm.
stuff like Bleach, where anime was bleeding into the public consciousness and becoming a pop culture mainstay in
Yep.
ways that weren't just the Saturday morning toy commercials like Pokemon, but were hitting more points of hitting more kinds of stories, right? The way
Yeah.
that anime was being talked about in America was expanding because this is 2004. This is the Toonami era. So think like your Cowboy Bebops, your Outlaw Star, even though that obviously wasn't as popular. Naruto was airing on Cartoon Network at 2 in the afternoon in the early 2000s. Like
Hmm.
anime was in a time where America was experimenting with basically how much money they could get off of localization. Companies like Viz Media were very eager to get very good actors and localizers together to make good physical releases of anime that could create a good market. And
The
Elfen
the
Lied,
advent of seeing the Dragon Ball DVD collections in Walmart that I still see to this very day that have this really iconic look in my mind of like the solid colors and like the stripe and
character
the episode
portrait,
numbers
yeah,
and the
yeah, yeah.
character port. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean that design of physical release is still around to this day.
Hmm.
Like you can
Hmm.
find new releases of stuff like My Hero Academia and Demon Slayer, and it looks exactly like that.
The shonen anime of the moment is always going to be there. Like, yeah, for sure.
I'll never forget I had a DVD of the first 4 episodes of Naruto Shippuden, and I watched that shit
I've
easily two
I've got
dozen
the
times.
entire I've got through the Soul Society arc on DVD of that I got at like half price books maybe like 5 years ago. Like I
Because
still have
what's
those.
because what's funny about this is that it started in the VHS era where you could only
Hmm.
fit like 3 or 4 episodes. Is that was how like Dragon Ball GT was distributed when that was making the rounds in home video. Was you would get like 3 or 4 episodes at a time on a tape because that was all they would want to put on it.
Hmm.
And so they started doing that with DVDs as well. So you would pay like $15 for 4 episodes of a
God.
show that would go on to run for 15 years like Naruto Shippuden did. Not a good
God,
not a
Naruto
good market to
Shippuden being
invest in.
15 years worth. Oh, God, put me in the grave.
I'm stretching it a little bit, but when you put Naruto and Naruto Shippuden together, yeah, easily 15 years of stuff that they were just putting out like 3 or 4 episodes at a time on these little DVDs.
Oh, Kishimoto, you will be tried for your crimes one day.
So, Jake, how did you get here?
You know,
What was your backstory with Elfen Lied? Why did you do this to me?
see, the thing is that there's not a real story that I had with this show beyond the fact that I was watching something. I'm not really sure I remember at the time. It may have been Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. It may have been Bleach, because those were two of the ones that I like sought out online. Or it also could have been Bakano, maybe. It would actually, you know what? It probably was Bakano because that was one of the first anime I remember watching where I was just like, wow, this is like really different in ways I never like I the idea of anime taking from Western media was a totally alien concept to me. So when I started consuming a show like Bakano and it was just like doing Tarantino riffs, and I was like, what the fuck am I looking at here? And I that was like sort of my key into being like, wow, there really is just a whole nother world out there with all of this shit. And one day in the YouTube recommended sort of feed, Elfen Lied was just there.
Back
And
when you
I
could
was
watch
like,
anime on YouTube.
yeah, back when you could just kind of do that. And I remember being like, I took like one look at the first episode, and then I remember being like, uh, let me go look and see if anybody I know has reviewed this. And then that, because that was how I got into lots of different scenes, is that I would pay attention to particular anime YouTube reviewers, people like Jesu Otaku at the time, Bennett the Sage at the time. And I'm pretty sure the person that I got this from was a guy who went by the name of Glass Reflections. He might still actually have an active YouTube channel. Had a weird fucking outfit. He always reviewed shit, and you know how reviewers are with that kind of shit. But I remember seeing his review of it and basically talking about how much violence was in it. And I was just like, I didn't really pay any attention to his criticisms because I was just like, huh, I'm curious. Because like the funny thing about my upbringing is that like I wasn't exposed to anime until I was in like late elementary, early middle school.
I was about the
But
same.
like so I kind of like that was when I was watching that stuff, but at the same time, so I you would think that's like, oh, this is the first time I'm ever seeing stuff like that. I also grew up in a household where my mom was very lax about some things that I could watch. For example, I remember when we lived in a duplex in Lexington, I was watching Law and Order Special Victims Unit at age 9. Probably love you, mom. Probably shouldn't have done that, but like, so
It
I
made you who
was.
you are today, didn't
It
it?
did. It very much did. But I was very used to a very specific kind of violence when I remember like media from that era of just like, Law and Order, American crime television, where it's like all of the nasty stuff on TV is not necessarily in the action of violence. It's always kind of the aftermath. It's like you're seeing corpses on the street. You're seeing people talk about autopsy reports. You're in the sex crimes division, ICE, that kind of shit. So it's like I'm used to seeing things like blood and, all of this awful shit, but never in a way where violence is shown to me as being cool. So then
Yeah.
you move on to anime, and it's like I'm watching Bleach, I'm watching Full Metal Alchemist, where the action is so creative and there is so much to the battles and physical altercations of this. It was just like it was something that, activated my neuron. And then I see something like Elfen Lied, and it's just like, okay, so this is like known for being extreme. And so I'm like, okay, why not try this out? And this was something that like I lump this in with another show that I have actually covered in the past with August. I this is right up there with Future Diary as being an anime that came out and like even as a not critically minded kid, I knew this sucked. Like, I knew this was bad and trashy and like that I shouldn't have been watching it, but it had this indelible quality where I was just kind of like, I remember that it was the question I kept asking myself as a child when I would watch something like this or Future Diary, where when I wasn't completely enamored with just being like, oh my God, what the fuck? I was kind of asking myself, why would someone tell this story? And as I sit here in 2025, I'm still not sure I can answer that question.
So, Elfen Lied is an interesting case because it's certainly an example of outsider art. I'm taking a lot of what I know about the production of this from big shout out to Hazel's video,
Great video.
Why Did We Like Elfen Lied, which basically goes to an anthropological extent of figuring out how and why Elfen Lied had the impact that it did at the time that it came out. And something that she points out is that the author Lin Okamoto was basically just a guy who decided that he wanted to write a comic book, and that was Elfen Lied. He
Mhm.
was into some shoujo stuff, but he wanted to combine that with this idea that he had for this science fiction horror story. And so it became this interesting genre blend of like this obviously is a sign in. It's meant for young but not prepubescent boys.
It's the same category that people would put things like Berserk into, basically.
Yeah, it kind of fits into the same category as Berserk, but it has some narrative and emotional beats that are way more in line with like shoujo romance or harem stuff, right? Where the
Hmm.
relationships between the characters are treated as significant elements of the plot that need to be dwelled on in order for the story to say what it needs to say and get across.
Yep.
But the thing about Elfen Lied is that these two parts of it, right? The relationship drama about this ensemble cast of very traumatized children and the sci-fi horror thriller narrative never really coalesce in the same moments in time until basically the last two episodes. And so you spend the whole of this show going back and forth between this very strange tonal dissonance of this government plots involving these biological living weapons that have the power to do all kinds of damage to humanity.
The
And then,
Diclonius.
yeah, the Dicloni. And then a story about a bunch of people who cannot remember anything that has ever happened to them. And
Just
and
the worst collective memories of any set of characters I've ever seen in anything. Like these guys are borderline brain damaged because you are constantly in awe of the fact that they are just like, what happened? I don't know. Who knows?
but the first episode of this show, I will say, does exactly what it needs to do to set something like this up, you know?
Can I
The
can I just say that it's an overarching thing in the bad things that I'm recommending to you is that a lot of them have like deceptively really good starts.
I
Like
was about to
the
compare to Detroit, yeah, because
yeah, like
Detroit starts in a very similar way, where it's like, oh, a lot of the ideas that the story is going to be exploring are introduced in a way that is very inviting and very striking to the viewer. What happens after? We'll
let
get to.
much less so. Though I really like I remember being like because it's like the opening episode of this is I honestly I attribute like half of this show's, success and cultural longevity to like the first half specifically of the first episode. Because in it, you end up following a character who this show very smartly positions as like a very typical anime protagonist character, a kind of clumsy but still kind of likable female lead who is going to work at this kind of suspicious government facility place. And she's very like sprightly, and like she knows the people there, like she clearly like likes her job, and like is has a rapport with the people around her. And you think that you're going to be following this character throughout, like she's going to be caught into the web of what's going on here. And you go to a secret government facility where there's a scary thing being hidden there. Naturally, you're going to wait for them to break out. So you're like, oh, she's going to be part of like the team, or she's going to see it happen or whatever. And the potentially only interesting subversion of expectations that happens in this show happens with a actually really fucking metal shot reveal, if I'm honest, after Lucy the Diclonius escapes from her confinement. And basically, like you see like her break out, and then you see the main character kind of like go down the hallway and like realize kind of what's happening. And then you kind of get a shot, reverse shot, where in it you're just like, hey, why does, oh, her head is off, oh, oh, she's dead, oh, okay. And it's like there are so many cool images here. They're not necessarily even violent. Like the idea of the Diclonius having these invisible arms, and like they are mainly detected through the fact that like there's just an inordinate amount of blood whenever they're attacking people, and so there's like bloody handprints all over the place and shit. Like
Yeah.
there's, I mean, honestly, very Death Stranding in nature. Like that's actually what that reminded me of, is like the opening hour of Death Stranding, but in the anime format. And then people are dismembered in ways you will never see people dismembered if you don't watch shit like this on a regular basis. So it's like it's a really, really memorable opening sequence that does a lot to play with your
The
expectations.
thing about, do you want to know something insane that I just thought of?
Please.
The way the actual things that this sequence accomplishes are basically can be spoken about with the same tone that people who are way too into Pokemon talk about the deleted scenes from Mewtwo's Revenge.
I don't know about this.
You don't know about this?
No.
So there are scenes that were cut from the theatrical release of the first Pokemon movie that basically show like Mewtwo's childhood and all of the other clone Pokemon that it was raised with. Then they all die. Then Mewtwo breaks out and kills a bunch of people, and that's how the story starts. But that's cut from all subsequent releases of the movie. I believe this is going to sound insane. I believe there were a couple of times that they showed the movie on Cartoon Network where they put those back in. So I've seen this shit. I know it's real.
Wow.
But it's
Interesting.
basically the same thing that happens at the start of this story. And so I was
More
thinking
or
about
less.
that as I was reflecting on that first episode. Also should be said that obviously like this show had pull at the time. So much
Hmm.
pull that the Duffer Brothers, when coming up with the character of Eleven, basically just stole the idea of the
And
character of
like
Lucy.
honestly, I would even say that there is a lot of
There's
like
a lot of stuff in season 4 that retreads a lot of stuff
yeah,
in
like,
this.
and even the like domestic stuff is very similar to the more kind of just 80s adventure stuff that they do in Stranger Things. It's different tonally, obviously, but like it's a lot more similar than I initially like. I was initially just like, oh, Lucy the Diclonius 11 are like the same thing. They have like the power set. They escape from the facility and they're trying to round them up and stuff. But like then there's the idea of like the paternal father character, and then there's the other characters who are also Diclonii, whatever the fuck you want to call the plural of that. But like there is a lot more of this ingrained into Stranger Things than I think I first assumed there was back when I just learned that as a piece of trivia.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of shared DNA there. Like I was going back and reading the plot summary of Stranger Things season 4 to get some idea. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a lot there because then you have the rival telekinetics in that last season. That's basically what the crux of this whole show's like battle anime tributes rely on is more Dicloni for Lucy to fight. But the thing about this show is that it wants to be a mystery, but has no idea how to give the audience questions to ask of the plot,
It
where you're
just
just kind of constantly
nope.
faced with characters who either have forgotten something that happened to them, are keeping something secret from somebody, but we as the audience don't know that until they tell them, or start to tell somebody something and then stop.
Oh, brother. Oh, brother. Like the amount of coincidental circumstance that occurs in this story, like I am so like if I were teaching people how to not plot a story and what plotting is as a concept in narrative, I will use Elfen Lied as an example of every mistake you can possibly make when sort of charting a narrative course, because every possible sin, storytelling wise, that can be committed here is committed and committed over and over and over again to a degree that is like so frustrating because like this is a 12 episode show and you're
13.
like this could have been 4 episodes at maximum with the amount of story that occurs over this like
Do you
longevity.
know how long this manga is?
I don't actually.
It is over 100 chapters. So much of the fat has been trimmed just to make this.
And for like and it's crazy because like you probably could have included a lot more with the amount of actual material that you ended up having because like again, they stretch so much of this material because of the amnesia subplots, because of characters who are talking to someone and then they get interrupted and oh no, I guess I'm not going to talk about that for the next 5 days of this narrative for no fucking reason.
So,
And
can we
like
talk about what this story is about aside from
yeah,
Lucy for a
let's
second?
we got to get into the weeds here.
We've explained one part of the story, which there is a race of people called Dicloni, individual Diclonius. One of
They got
them,
little horns.
they got little horns on their head and they all have pink hair coincidentally, and they're all ooh little girls, not coincidentally. And so
Bright anime eye.
big anime
Wow,
eyes.
sound effect.
One of them, Lucy, breaks out of an experimental facility. She kills a bunch of guards. She's shot and she falls in some water. She forms a split personality named New and washes up on a shore. She is found by these two cousins, Koda and Yuka, who haven't seen each other for a very long time. They have moved into this home that is owned by members of their family because they've both started university, even though we never see these fucking kids go to school throughout this whole show. Whatever. I don't actually care about that.
There is no interiority to the lives of these people. Like, if the story is not happening in front of your eyes, these characters aren't doing anything. They are NPCs in a video game waiting for you to come up to them and press A so that the story starts.
Koda and Yuka find Lucy. They decide to take her in because they're children and they can't think to turn her over to social services. Whatever, it's fine. If
Your
this was the
university age, you should probably have a bit more sense than these characters end up having, but you know,
Ugh.
far from the stupidest thing that happens in this story.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, if this was the only stupid thing that happened, I could
God,
probably overlook it.
exactly. Like
Because
you
this is
can
this
write
is where we
around
get the
that.
premise, right? We get the
Hmm.
premise out of these characters being in the same place at the same time. We establish pretty quickly that Coda's sister has died because the conflict of this episode involving these three characters is that Lucy accidentally, or New, excuse me, accidentally finds a seashell that belonged to Koda's sister and breaks it. And that like sets Koda off. And so that even I would say sets up an interesting start of this other side of this kind of genre hybrid where it's going to be basically about their domestic life.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, you know what? I can get with this. This could go somewhere. I think they can make this work if they can handle this amnesia subplot correctly. I'm not sure what's going to come of Coda and Lucy's relationship or Coda and Yuka's relationship yet, but you're laying the groundwork, right, for a story that's going to be ultimately about these three characters getting to know one another, and maybe this big conflict comes back in later. The second episode doesn't start off on a bad beat either. Like I think the scene of Lucy coming out again and killing all those squad guys is also similarly edited very, very well and executed really well. I think the
Yep.
character of Bando serves a good narrative purpose for this kind of story where he is like the villain who is working entirely of his own volition away
He's
from the
just
government
a
agency.
fucking psychopath. Like,
Yeah,
he's
he's just a
just
fucking
insane.
psychopath who wants to murder this child so bad.
There is no other way to put it than murder makes this man's dick hard. That just
He's just constantly calling Lucy a bitch, and I just like, ooh, this is making
there
me
there
really
is
uncomfortable.
like, okay, far be it from me to actually legitimately expect mid 2000s anime, especially mid 2000s anime of this kind, to have any kind of even decipherable sexual politics, but like, put that aside for just a moment. It is just unpleasant how much awful shit happens to women in this show. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know how to put it other than, oh wow, the amount of violence here is bad, but like, I can handle the dismemberment. It's just the constant, like, beating the shit out of these people. And then there's another Diclonius character who the amount of violence enacted on her is so fucking comical. You're just like, what are we doing here, man?
and the
Like,
amount of like, I don't know how else to say this. I'm going to steal the phrase from Hazel. The amount of like male gazy violence that happens to these characters, where
violence that
even
occurs not to be violent, but to show violence in a sexual context.
yeah, violence that is meant to
Titillate.
titillates in a way that goes beyond the normal convention of, battle manga, your battle anime, where, there is an appeal to combat, right? We talked about this with Bleach, the idea of seeing how characters are going to work through a combat situation being a big appeal of shows like this.
Yeah.
That's not what this is doing at all. And not
Nope.
saying that it has to do that, but what it substituted for is just something that makes me really uncomfortable more often than not, and that
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to see, that I don't like thinking
And
about.
and frankly, I would be able to swallow this pill just because, again, it does come with the territory to some extent. But even outside of the violence, just, oh man, the writing for every female character in this entire show is just like, it's even implying that there's sort of thought put into it, it is kind of doing it a disservice. Is like, these characters exist to be ragdolls, to just have horrible things happen to them, to be vessels for unpleasantness, for various traumas, for like Coda's cousin is the worst fucking character ever. Like, what the fuck is this character doing in this show other than whining, complaining, just generally just like, oh my god, I wish that these people would stop being in this story because they don't contribute in any meaningful way past a certain point, and then wait until the very end to do anything with what they're set up to do.
Right. The worst part is that the further the show goes on, the less that Yuka has to do. The most impactful thing that she does happens in the third episode when cousin incest is introduced into this story. And
I, is there like, can I just ask a really real question for a moment?
who enjoys this?
But like, actually, the fact that the incest trope is not something that was contained to a specific place in a specific time, like, is there like an anthropological explanation as to why this is a continued trope in not even just Japanese media, but like it's also just, it's sort of dominated the adult entertainment industry as well. Like, just the trope of incest is so alarmingly common these days. And I don't, like, as someone who is just curious, I just want to know why. Like, other than it being like, oh, it's like a vaguely taboo thing that makes, if you're a sexually repressed weirdo and you get off to that shit, you get off to that shit. But like, why did this happen so much and never stop?
The worst thing about the incest plot in this show is that it doesn't even wrap itself up. Like
No.
Yuka and Koda kiss and make up, and then they're never that relationship is never explored again in any meaningful way, apart from Yuka occasionally getting upset again that he's getting like a little bit cuddly with New because New is has the mind of a child and
Because
doesn't know what
you
she's
have to
doing.
do the weird harem jealousy plot because that's a stock beat from that particular thing. And like, again, I'm not adverse to this being in a story if you do something with it, like fucking, if you old boy with it and you make it part of the theme and you explore the thorniness of something like that. It's like, oh, okay, this is something that, fiction can talk about anything, and this is something, it does happen. So like, what can we do with this? But it is always more or less an excuse for a character to just have an expanded harem of just like, oh, this character has all these love interests in this thing, and oh, here comes his cousin, and she's got big tits, and it's like, uh, uh.
I will say, episode 3 does at least end on a promising note because I like, after 2 episodes of such gratuitous violence, the way that that episode ends on just Nana walking up to Lucy on a set of stairs and just being
Mm-hmm.
like, "You're gonna come with me, or I'm gonna kill you." And there's no music, no nothing, and we just cut to credits. I'm like,
Good
okay,
beat,
there's
good
still
beat.
there's still something here. This is a good beat. There's something here. And
And
I mean,
then poor Nana.
poor
Oh
Nana.
boy.
The character of Nana is easily the most messy from a character arc perspective of all of these because Nana has a good motivation at first, right? Or she has a sensible motivation of she's been sent out to basically get Lucy, bring her back. Good. That's a good setup for like a monster of the week type of episode.
And she's
The
clearly like
smartest,
brainwashed by the people who invented or like held captive the Diclonius. Like she is clearly acting in their favor.
yeah. And they haven't set up all of the complexities of Nana's relationships with Kurama yet. So you think you can treat this as like a, oh, the next episode is just going to be a battle episode
Mm-hmm.
for Lucy and Nana. But the battle, not only is it underwhelming compared to all the action scenes thus far, but it ends with the strangest configuration that you could possibly do with these fucking characters, which is that Lucy reverts back to Nana, or Lucy reverts back to New, and Nana decides that she's just gonna follow her home to see what's going on instead of just like continuing with trying to abduct her and bring her back. And there's no real reason I can think of why she would do that.
And like I feel like there could be something that you could just kind of toss in there to just be like, oh, they're trying to observe, like they're trying to contain the situation, so they send her in as like a spy or something so that they can, do some damage control and assess how much the people who have made contact with the Diclonius know about the Diclonius, and just be like, oh, and have her like wired so that she could have the information so that they could talk to them or something, fucking anything. But every character in this is just a pure mechanism for functional plot beats. And it goes against all logic and all sense of character writing. It's like if the story needs a character to do something, it will just have them do it. It will not
Yeah.
provide a reason.
Like episode to episode, the motivations of these characters will just change on a dime. Like especially with the Kurama character, who is told at the end of this episode to put Nana down. We don't find out the immediate aftermath of that and for a couple of episodes, but he eventually just decides to disappear, like just let her run away, so he doesn't have to kill her. And somehow nobody thinks to ask him, like, hey, did you kill that girl yet?
I mean, like
Everybody
the
just
amount of
assumes that he
oversight in
did
this
it,
program
even though
is
there's no proof that he did. And so you spend
no.
several episodes with Kurama just off somewhere doing something, and Nana off somewhere else doing
Doing
other
something.
things, and Nana is like not motivated to find the person that she treats like is her father. She's not really motivated to bring Lucy back in, even though she eventually finds her. She forms an allegiance with Bondo because Bondo wants to kill Lucy more than Nana, which, like, fine,
Sure.
that beat, you can make that work.
It's something. I'll take it.
It's something. But oh
Oh,
man, we have to talk about Mayu. We need to talk about Mayu.
we do.
And this is where this show's penchant for essentially torturing its characters really comes into full form, because Mayu is a homeless little girl who you find out that she's being molested by her stepfather and abandoned by her mother because she's jealous of how much attention that she's getting from the stepfather. I am not stretching. That is the
Nope.
tone with which this is approached.
I can't believe you'd fuck your daughter more than me. Ugh.
Oh man, and Coda also decides to take in Mayu because they realize that she is homeless. So now we have a new party member of an abandoned girl with basically no tangible past, because even though, obviously Mayu knows what her past is, it's not important to what's going on, and Mayu is just kind of there the whole rest of the time. I don't even know why this character is here apart from there to be another tragic backstory in the Rolodex. And that's the thing,
Yeah.
is that the plot of this show, the backstories of these characters are not as important to establishing who they are as people as it is important to give the audience something else to jeer at. You
Yeah.
know, it is adding a layer of disgust without adding a layer of complexity. It's very strange, where so many of the things about Mayu and particular beats about Lucy's backstory don't affect the plot or the way that the characters interact with each other in any way, because these characters don't talk to each other about their pasts. Their pasts are just revealed to us as audience
Yep.
members as a mechanism to
Non-diegetic.
yeah, they're delivered non-diegetically as a way to understand who these characters are, but they're ultimately unnecessary and they don't really add anything into the mix other than just, yeah, more instances of suffering to add onto the pile. The
Add another
only
collectible trauma girl
yeah,
like Pokemon.
the only time that a non-diegetic flashback works like this to contextualize a character's motivation, I would say, is with the character of Kurama, where he
Yeah.
gets a whole episode dedicated to his backstory that actually does flesh him out and make some of the decisions that he's made in the past, and the decisions that he'll make in the subsequent episodes make more sense to us as viewers. I like the execution of that as a non-diegetic flashback, but none of the other ones really do anything for the story or the themes other than women get victimized a lot in the world that this story takes place in, which, like, yeah, I fucking got that with Mayu, and we just keep doing it with everybody else.
Man, it's rough. It's rough. Like this middle stretch of the show is, I mean, I feel like interminable is kind considering how like you're just waiting for the story to pick up and it's just constantly inventing new distractions from getting you there. Like you're just kind of like, okay, all right, I'm waiting for this narrative beat to come and it'll just throw in a random fucking character and a random fucking backstory and you're like, okay, are we gonna? And then it's just like, here's something shiny to distract you, to move you from one episode to the next. Which I will say, we have committed a grave sin, Jen. We have been talking about anime for a while, technically speaking, even since before the show. And we have not talked about anime OPs one goddamn time. Not even once. And you know what?
Although to be fair,
I'll give Elfen Lied this. Banger OP. I actually really like the combination of the like gothic Ilium song with the weird Baroque painting shit that's going on in the intro to this. Like it is very weirdly alluring for the kind of show that this is.
oh, it has a grandiosity to it that definitely fits with the again, fits with the first episode's approach to tone. But
Yeah.
the longer this goes on, the
The
more
less it feels like it belongs.
yeah, the less that OP feels like it belongs, the more tonally dissonant it feels.
Yep.
And I want to say something. This show wants to tackle childhood trauma
Oh
in
yes.
ways that I want to resonate with because we have a lot of
Yes.
characters that come from disparate parts of childhood, right?
Hmm.
You have victims of child sexual assault, children who move through the foster care system, children who experience repressed memories, who experience being orphans, who experience deaths of people that are important to them. All things that shape them as people in one way or another, even if they're not immediately evident in the way that the story executes these things.
Hmm.
And there are lots of great examples of like children's literature that I'm very invested in that handle this stuff very well. And
Yes.
every time something like this comes up, I want the show to be able to stick the landing on some kind of commentary about basically the way that children are the least privileged class in any society.
I This is something that like if I overarchingly, if I could describe what is the main focal point of everything I try to write about, that's it right there. That is the topic that most interests me in fiction is just how we collectively eat for all of the social advancements that we may have made over the last 2 centuries and whatnot, how we have just completely failed to reconcile with the autonomy of children and how we barely treat them like human beings. And I feel like that's responsible for so much interesting fiction that's come out in like the last 20 years that I think reconciles like, and I mean like there's also, I mean shit, we're talking about stuff like Stranger Things and there's stuff like Stephen King's It, which came and swept up the fucking box office like it was going out of style. These are all things that are about like the interiority of childhood has the potential to be the most horrifying thing you can possibly fathom.
Yeah, and at the same time, there's, the old, who said this? I can't remember, some old fucking white guy, but it's like the most monstrous thing is the innocence of a child. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like the cruelty that children are capable of is unlike
And
anything the world will ever experience.
And it's so close to actually making a point about that with Lucy and with the Diclonius. It's so close. And then it just fucking face plants right at the end. Spectacular. Like, you have this excuse to be like, you have these characters who are ostensibly human children, like the Diclonius, even as children, they can still like rationalize and behave as kids, and we see Lucy in sort of a nascent childhood state as the like in some of the later episodes that have to do with Coda's flashbacks and stuff. But like there is a point where it's like, oh, the response to something horrible happening is like the retaliation that Lucy has is not exactly equal in terms of the amount of suffering on both sides that's going on. And like there could be some kind of point you could make about the fact that it's like, hey, if children were capable of the horrible things that adults do to them, we would all be fucked. Society as
Yeah.
we know it would collapse entirely because this unprotected class of person, if you give them unchecked power, they'd fucking murder you because of course they would. You treat them like garbage, not just
But it doesn't land any of
not
that at
even.
all, right?
Nope.
Because, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of potential for something like that to come into fruition. And God, I wish it had any percentage of accomplishing that, but it just doesn't.
What
And
if
so what
murdering
ends
a
up
puppy was bad? That's pretty deep. That's pretty deep, man. What if I did a school shooting because they killed my dog? What about that? Cool, man. Shit, like, what do I even
them
say?
them damn liberals killed my dog.
But yeah, the entire unfolding of the exploration of our main character's amnesia and just the circumstantial coincidence that he and Lucy the Diclonius happen to have a shared history is like, really?
I would be more generous to this if it didn't try so fucking hard to bury such an obvious lead.
You think that
If this
like the
show
show
had
is
one,
intentionally trying to fake you out with that plot point, right?
yeah,
Like it's
if this
you think
had
that it's
one,
about to be like, oh, she didn't actually kill his sister, and it's like, no, she didn't. It's like, well, then what the fuck was all that build up for? What are we doing?
yeah, like they forecast this so obviously that by the time it happens, you think a joke is being played on you. Of like even
You're waiting for a further reveal of some kind of just being
yeah,
like,
you're
is
waiting for some kind of subsequent, like, actually, it wasn't what you thought it was, but this writer has no understanding of dramatic irony, and so he can't think to even for a second let the audience know something that the characters don't. And so that just makes the story feel like it's constructing itself as it goes along in a lot of ways, right? It doesn't feel like anything that happens before anything else is informed by what comes after it, you know?
mm-hmm, abs like perfectly said. You know, I guess there could theoretically be something about the concept of him forgiving her, but it's so spectacularly unearned that you're just like, this was just a lazy way to solve a problem that you wrote for yourself.
Because that's the question, right? When you build this up to this is your big emotional crux, right? Lucy was battered publicly and starts killing a bunch of people. Before then, we find this out over several episodes, kind of spread out. She has a run in with Coda, and they like hang out, and Coda lies about Yuka being a girl or not being a girl because I guess they're attracted to each other by then. I don't know.
Weird.
I don't fucking know. It's dumb. But
Yeah.
Coda lying about this and Lucy finding out about it gives her motivation to follow Coda onto a train after she starts attacking people and to kill his sister and his dad. And I'm so horrible. I'm a terrible person. When
Are you?
when Coda's dad dies, I laughed.
Oh, it's so
I laughed.
funny. It's so
Hey Coda,
funny.
what's going on in here?
Boom. It's funny. Like, I get that there is often a link between comedy and horror and like violence in a way that is often like either taken for granted or genuinely exploited in the case of many great horror comedies. Or, you know, Evil Dead is a franchise entirely about how horrible violence is also kind of funny if you really think about it.
Timing is the most important thing here. That's the
And
key.
it's always like it feels designed like a comedic beat. It feels like you're watching something that you're designed to go because it's fucking funny. Like
It is funny. It's
the
like the bit.
timing,
You want to know what I want to compare this to really quickly? It's like
please.
the bit in Weapons where he steps over the line of salt,
Oh
and
my
then the
god, that's so good.
the
That's
loudest
so
thing possible happens, where the adult who's like
and
set up for the trap
fucking
starts screaming at the top of their lungs and reaching their arms toward the camera like this. Like that is funny.
Weapons is a great example of how you handle so much of the material in this. Like so much of that and is done elegantly and like without over explaining itself. It's like it knows exactly how much information to dole out to still make its point about like children. And it's like, it's a movie called Weapons. There's a giant floating AR-15 in a dream sequence, and the most memorable image in the movie is a teacher walking into a completely empty classroom. It's just like, gee, I wonder what this movie is subtextually about. But like this is also kind of doing that. Like there's some violence that happens in a classroom in some of these flashbacks that again after the dog thing happens, it's like where it kind of feels like it's gravitating towards wanting to maybe be about that kind of sort of, but like it doesn't ever capitalize on its own images, which is so strange to me because it's like you have this concept that has the potential to create things that are memorable and that I do remember some bits of, even though we haven't really commented on it much. But like, boy, howdy, the animation in this show sucks. Like, there's just no other way to put it, and that I fucking hate how this thing looks. The pastels in this are so washed out. Like, it is such a how to draw anime ass character designs that like
Yeah.
Lucy, when she has the Lucy persona, I like how that character is drawn, how like her eyes are thinner, the hair is kind of in front of her face. It kind of makes her look a little intimidating. But then when she does the new thing, it's just like, again, I'm looking at a how to draw anime book talk to me, and it's not interesting to look at, and it abandons the principle of like, I can't remember in under what context I said this recently, but it's like I feel like the most important thing with horror is just learning how to make a memorable image. Learning how to make a memorable image
You
and
said that
imbue it
about
with them.
Weapons after you saw it
Yeah,
in an earlier episode.
fucking exactly. Is that you just have to know how to make something that you will remember. And even like, for all of Stranger Things' faults, narratively speaking, like the place that show goes with Eleven's subplot, specifically the one in season 2 notwithstanding, that's kind of like, oh, the Duffer Brothers understand like how to make this work. Like they have the beats here where it's like I feel like they capitalize on the idea of having a character who has legitimately done monstrous things and harmed people, having to reckon with the fact that they have done that, but also reckoning with the fact that it was not your fault that these things happened. The people who took care of you did not take care of you, and you became a facilitation of their violence, and you shouldn't have to own that. And then you reckon with that later in the show with her parental figure.
Yeah.
And here,
Compare this to something like Stephen King's Carrie, which
yeah,
treats the ultimate act of violence in its climactic moments as karmic punishment that legitimately lines up with what the story is trying to say about misogyny and
mm-hmm.
about young adulthood. Whereas the
It's
way that this sets up the Dicloni as a legitimate like threat to humanity that need to be taken out lest they be out of control, right?
totally
Lucy,
eliminates any semblance of like moral like opaqueness like at all.
there is no way that Lucy can achieve karmic justice thematically. Because
No,
if Lucy
no.
wins, then
I
then
mean,
we
everybody's
lose.
fucked.
Yeah,
Like you're just that
if
you're
Lucy
gonna
wins, then
have to
everybody's
send in
fucked.
a government agency to destroy her. Like she's an atomic bomb walking around the streets of Japan. Like this is just not, you can't do this.
Detroit doesn't go, I'll admit that Detroit doesn't go so far to make this impossible to pull off,
Hmm.
but Detroit has a similar problem where you've set up a world where humans have a reason to be skeptical about this thing
It's
that you're using as a kind of allegory for marginalization.
it is the classic issue, and I want it to be noted that before I make this criticism of this particular allegory, I am a big X-Men fan, but that is the problem with X-Men's allegory that I feel like wasn't really addressed until X-Men 97 came out, because there's an episode in that show that has to do with Genosha. If you know anything about X-Men, you know what that storyline is, and the storyline with Trask and the Sentinels and all of that. And it's like it's only addressed because they do the fucking meme where they go, I can't no, I can remember the specific line. It's just like, when I saw everything around me, I thought the only thing you could think when a giant robot is chasing you that is designed to kill you. Magneto was right. Like that's the only way you can do that and address that in a way that feels like it makes sense, because otherwise giving marginalized characters that are meant to represent that, distinguished class, they like that allegory doesn't work because black people in real life don't have superpowers. Gay people in real life do not have superpowers. Like those are
There is
not
that one
things.
day a year where black people get superpowers. Don't you know about
Yeah,
this?
there is the one, and you know what? We're very thankful for that. I hope that gay people one day get the same privilege. But that being said, it is something about that metaphor that does not entirely work. But yet, this show is like treating the Diclonius as though they are. If we present any layer of reality, it's like, no, they gotta go. Like
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like they gotta go. It's actually it's the same problem with the new fucking Jurassic Park movies where they're like, we can live in harmony with the dinosaurs. It's like, no, nuke them. Jeff Goldblum is right. Kill them. We can't do this. This is the point of the story, idiot. Like, we cannot be preserving these creatures. It's our fault. We suck for doing it. It's not good that they gotta go, but they gotta go.
Anyway, what were we talking about? Fucking Elfen Lied.
Fucking
Um,
Elfen Lied or something,
we've
man.
gone
Like
from
it,
like Carrie to Jurassic Park to X-Men, all stuff that frankly do exist in a kind of conversation with this. So I don't think
and
we've gone too far off
another Stephen
course.
King story, Rage, that one that got banned. That's kind of like Carrie, but with school shootings. Like actually, it's kind of like a manifesto, and it got banned because it was really controversial. Like I actually think that has a lot in common with this, but it is also
I'm trying
the
to find a copy.
delineation
I'm
between
trying
the
to find a
two.
copy of that book for a
It's
project that I'm
very
working on.
difficult to find a copy of that now.
I
Like
know because
I don't
Stephen
know if
King
you.
has made sure of that.
Yeah, exactly. And like understandable, but at the same time, like it's these ideas, like again, it's weird that this is all coming back around to school shootings, but I guess everything does in a way. But like it's such a salient point, and it's such an easy point to make too, if we're being real. And it's like this show sets up like 90 layups and fumbles all of them somehow. Like this is stuff that I feel like is not particularly difficult to accomplish. Like its own stated goals as a story feel like a slam dunk. And it just the ending is just a complete fucking
Yeah, like I could get over a lot of the stuff about this show that bugs me if the story was better. But every time we get a scene of fucking you molesting Yuka or whatever, I'm just like, we could be doing plot right now.
the fan service in this show is egregious in a word. And fan service is like, you know how we talked about filler when we're like, the kids these days use the word filler, and I don't really think they know what that word originally was supposed to mean.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about fan service, and that, people will
No,
say like,
today they're in comments on TikToks talking about how they skip sex scenes in movies. That's the filler.
yeah. And
That's the fan service of today.
like fan service in this context, like, and I'm not going to pretend like it's, not in American media also, just because we're like so aggressively sexualized in so much of our art, but like with Japan and anime, the fan service for a while, it was a real blight. Like it was a part of, I mean, but because it was a part of marketing, it was a part of the fetishistic nature of these tropes and trying to appeal to people and trying to use sexuality to appeal to a foreign market. And so they put a lot more of it in their shows. But when you do that, it starts to feel really aggressively corporate. It feels aggressively out of place. And in an instance like this, it is distracting you from doing something worthwhile with your time. I don't really want to watch New molest mini characters because she doesn't understand how social cues work. I really have no interest in people's boobs being groped all the time. It's just I like, there is a stark difference between having a couple shots of Yoroichi's cleavage in Bleach and being like, oh ho, this is a character who uses her sexuality to get what she wants sometimes, and then just having that is one of my biggest problems
Constantly
with
having these characters half naked. Oh my
this
God.
this anime and many like it. I have my problem with fan service is this is that I am actually way more tolerant of it if it's diegetic, if the character is trying to do something with their sexuality, if the characters in it react to it like they are doing something with it. There's actually a moment where this does happen later in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood that I really, really like, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. But there are so many moments in anime where the fan service is non-diegetic. I am stealing this complaint from anime YouTuber who also came around in this era, who I still believe exists and has since transitioned from when I used to watch her, but goes by Trixie the Golden Witch these days. One of the first people I ever read blogs of because I loved her criticism so much. But in a video that I recommend to literally everyone looking to talk about criticism or just like video essays in this vein is look up her video on the anime series The Asterisk Wars. It's called The Asterisk Wars Suck. It's a long ass video. One of the best pieces of criticism I have ever seen on this entire platform. And it is talking about how these tropes in anime have been born out of a commercial place and kind of metastasized later into media to the point where you can't trace their purpose. Like there are shows being made where the sexualization, where the fan service is happening, but there is no stated reason beyond audience gratification. There's
Yeah.
no reason within the narrative whatsoever. And it always feels weird and slimy. And this show is littered with it. You can't go 5 minutes without an example being thrust in front of you. It is just, it's really icky.
And it's constant. It's always there. Every episode has at least one moment where you're just like,
And
why
it's
are they
often
naked?
being done
Why
with
are we naked?
it's often being done with children. Like, can we not? Like, feel
Yeah,
like
like
that's
even
not a
even
controversial thing to
Nana,
complain.
even
Yeah,
Nana is not immune to getting this kind of treatment.
like
Um,
just
and it's
we
just no,
don't
like
need
this is
that.
non-negotiable.
Yeah, like I don't need to back up my point here in just that like reading this as edgy is a kind way to interpret it.
Right. Yeah. Oof. Yeah, that's a great way to think about this. Edgy is being generous to some of what's going
It's
on
yeah,
here.
like I don't know if I could fully describe it as insidious, but I would describe it as clueless to the extent where it becomes insidious.
Yeah,
At a
I would
certain
go
point,
that far.
ignorance and maliciousness become the same thing, you know?
And I eventually just wrote down at some point, nothing has happened to escalate the conflict between the cousins in 4 episodes. And then in all caps, I just wrote down while watching this, I can't stand these characters just not hearing something someone says, and then the person says, never mind. This was
Like,
in episode 9 that I wrote that down, and that's not the last time that's going to happen.
and it's insane because this is also a trope. from anime is that this is born from like there's an old episode of the seminal shoujo comedy Ranma One Half, a very gender show about a guy who goes into a magical spring and then turns into a lady, and then there's lots of hijinks and stuff. And in it, there's a point where there's a confession at the end of a season of this show to one character. And then it's like build up as a romance, and you're like, oh wow, these characters are finally going to get together. And then in the next season, in the first episode, it's revealed that the one person didn't hear the other person's confession, and it didn't happen. The show's just like, oh, because you didn't hear it. And then a person who confessed is like, well, I guess I just can't just say it again. And you're like, oh my God, stop! And that happens
Why?
multiple
But
times in
why?
this
Why are
show.
we like this? Why are we like this?
We can't do this, guys. Like, just say what you mean and get to the character writing. You're just delaying it. You're just making me wait for no reason.
And
Stop.
the last thing I want to comment on is how this show, in its last third, figures out what its story should have actually been about, which is
Yep.
fucking Kurama.
Mhm.
The story should have just been about him. Why isn't he the protagonist?
Utterly, utterly clueless. And it's like, it's not like as though, 6 episode OVAs didn't exist. Like, shit, like that's entirely what Gundam as a franchise is built out of. I feel like you could have condensed the budget, the story, everything. Like maybe it wouldn't have been as good of an adaptation, but like the 2000s, they weren't concerned with good adaptations. Like y'all these days are talking about the itty
That's why
bitty
filler
differences.
exists, dude. They don't
Like
care.
people are talking about like, oh, these itty bitty differences in between Vinland Saga the show and Vinland Saga the manga, and it's just like it is a privilege for you all to complain about this shit when we had stuff like Full Metal Alchemist 2003 where it was just like the rest of the show is fan fiction now, have at it. And it was like, all right, weird. So who cares? Who cares if it was an honest adaptation or not? You could have done this.
Yeah, and like there's a moment in the last episode where I kind of realized this, and it's where Kurama reveals himself to Mariko for the first time. And Mariko is his biological daughter who's
Yeah.
been basically taken from him because she is also a Diclonius, and she's like the biggest baddest of them all. So
Yeah.
she's like the end game big bad. And Mariko has this gigantic emotional monologue toward Kurama
Mm-hmm.
when one, this character has barely been around, and two, the emotional arc for Kurama has already been resolved in episode 10. Like,
Yep.
throwing all of this at the wall at the 9th hour is one, a distraction from the characters that we thought this show was fucking about, and two, just a really bizarre decision structurally that really hurts the final episode. Because why is Kurama the guy that gets to deal the final blow to the big bad evil guy? Like, that's just so narratively unsatisfying for a show that claims to be taking influences from like battle manga, battle anime.
Right. Exactly.
Because Kurama has not been set up as a character who, frankly, has the power to affect the plot anymore, which is fine. But then you have him do that, and it's limp. It falls completely flat in the last episode. And there are just so many beats in that last episode where I think, okay, the context of what has come before does not inform what is happening right now. Like Coda tackling Lucy and them having like a half-second exchange where they're still blushing at each other. And I'm like, you were on a bridge facing a firing squad, and you just got your memories back that this girl killed your dad and your sister, and you're still gonna do the like jumped into your boobs moment from the Joss Whedon Justice League movie? Are you fucking serious?
That just that tonally speaking, like, and that's not the first time this show's penchant for like weird sexuality comes to ruin a dramatic moment. Like that happens at a like
I'm
it
just talking
happens
about
as
the
like a
most
scene
egregious example
segue.
in my mind.
No, yeah, it happens as like a way to transition into a different part of scenes and episodes. Like it's like we don't know how to end this scene. Boobs, boobs. Okay. And you're like, "Sure,
There's a moment
man.
where they're
What?"
cross there's a moment where they're cross-cutting between Niu and Mayu bathing together while Koda and Yuka are talking, and I'm just like, what are we doing?
Knock knock knock.
What?
FBI, open up. Like
I put a screenshot of Morgan's review, or better yet, get him to fucking record audio of him reading that and just drop it in here. But
good
it
idea.
does ring true to me now in a way that I was only frightened by when I first read it. That I do feel like I've been put on a list for talking about this on the internet,
Oh,
dude.
for sure. Like it's you can't walk
There's gonna
away
be people
from
who
this
see
and
this
not feel
thumbnail,
weird.
and there's gonna be people who see the thumbnail and that we're talking about Elfen Lied to just judge us immediately because they know what this is.
And
And
you
I
know
don't
what? That's
care.
fair. That's fair.
Yeah, like that's fair, and also I don't care because I know we're taking this seriously. So if you're gonna be
I
that
mean,
person, you're not listening to me right now anyway.
yeah, and you know, if anything, I mean, like, yeah, I definitely shouldn't have been watching this as a kid and for all that, but like, I still watched this and remembered being like, I felt instant shame whenever that stuff would happen. Like, even in that dramatic moment, I was like sitting there on my laptop in my room being like, I like, you know, you when you're a kid watching this stuff, it's not necessarily like, oh, I feel weird because of the sociological context of this. You feel weird because it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, how upset are my parents going to be if they walk into my room right now and look and see what they're looking at on my laptop? And in Elfen Lied's case, that's like a firm 9. Like there are very few things that I would want to be caught watching less than Elfen Lied. And like that doesn't not include porn. Like I probably would have had an easier time explaining if I was watching porn than if I was watching Elfen Lied.
Yeah,
It,
people
like
know why you watch porn.
yeah, precisely. Like with Elfen Lied, it's just kind of like, why are you even like why it seems like you put an unnecessary middleman in here of just like if you wanted to watch this for the boobs, there's a lot of bullshit in between the boobs. Like just way too much bullshit. And you know, like that can have its place too. Like there are shows out there that are made with legitimate artistic merit, like Kill la Kill, for instance, is like that's a show about the male gaze. That's a show about female sexuality. That's a show about nudity and about like all of those like, but it talks about them. It uses its imagery to say something about the medium. Here, it's just, you know,
It's
it would be funny
embarrassing.
if there were boobs here. Ha ha ha.
I was say, would it be funny or would it just be like good? I don't know. And the answer is no, most of the time. There's a moment. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. Like this is the most uncomfortable I've ever felt watching anything in my entire life. It's when Mariko is like chained to the wall and they're doing like a ballistics test on her where they keep shooting her with cannonballs and she's just
Oh
completely
man,
naked.
that sucks. That
And I
sucks.
and I was just like, it takes more work to undress and redress somebody. Like, if you think about the mechanism by which this scene has to happen, like the logistics of undressing this child and getting her like strapped up to this wall, like it's more effort to take her clothes off than to not, isn't it?
No, for sure. Like, and you know, if you want to like go there, like, 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 I'll be blunt. I have written some things and some shit that I've published. If I wrote them today, I probably would have eased up a bit. I probably would have been like, this is a little too far, like in one instance. And the difference between that and this miles. Like, I don't know. Like, the fact that so much work, you had to storyboard this, you had to plan this out, you had to draw every single frame, color it, voice act it, and Everybody along the assembly line process was just like, yep, good, checks out, send it, ship it, let's go, let's do it. You wonder how so many people did this, and like, maybe somebody did think it was weird or object to it. At the end of the day, a paycheck's a paycheck, but still you would wonder, like, is there not a way we can execute this in a just like, you know do we need to see her tits? That's the question you gotta ask, is that, do you need to? And the answer is very commonly no. Very commonly no.
We've maybe belabored the point on the sexuality of this. So before I put a cap on this, I just want to say this story sucks.
It's so
This
awful.
narrative sucks. I hate it. I
Nobody
understand.
changes. There's no arcs. There, like, you get revelations about existing characters that contextualize them. They don't change. They don't grow. They just remember shit that they forgot. That's the arc, is that information that is being, and man, I can't tell you a bigger pet peeve I have in fiction. Like, legitimately, this is my number one most hated fictional thing. Like, if you do this in a movie that's even otherwise good, I'll still be really bothered. Is withholding information from large amounts of the cast of your story that the audience knows, but most of the characters do not. Like,
Oh,
and you just have to wait for them to catch up to where you're at. I find that so tedious as a storytelling device. And every single subplot of this story is that. Every
yeah.
single one of them.
Yeah, that's what all the non-diegetic flashbacks do. That's what all the like amnesia stuff does to a certain extent. There's just a lot of moments in this where you understand things, but the characters don't, and the characters are never going to catch up to it because they don't know what they don't know. It's a very simple writing problem that this show indulges in to keep its mysteries going for as long as it possibly can. And it's miserable to sit through.
The longest 12 episodes of your life. Like, I watched this most recently in a Zoom call with August and Morgan, and like, we cleared it in an evening, but we walked away from that Zoom call and it was just like, oh God, I feel like I've been locked in my room for days. Like, oh Jesus, like, I need to look at something that isn't poorly drawn pastels. I need to do something with my life. You just instantly feel the basement stench after watching this, of just like, I feel unclean. My soul feels dirty.
There are people that have nostalgia for this, I'm sure, despite its faults.
I
I'm
have
one.
a degree of it, I suppose, but like, it's not nostalgia that informs any kind of warm feelings. Like,
Right, right. Nostalgia doesn't have to inform warm feelings. I guess what I mean is a
yeah,
kind of, a fondness for where you were in your life when you discover something like this, and a fondness
yeah,
for the media climate that produced it. Like Hazel talks a lot about this in
yeah,
her video, right? The media environment that produces something like Elfen Lied just doesn't exist anymore, for better or
no,
worse.
yeah, exactly.
And my absence of nostalgia completely standing here, this gets a full 5 points from me. I was hurt by this. Your red button
That's
attempt was a great success, my friend.
yeah, I mean, like, even if you add the total sum of things in this show that you can appreciate or don't hate or feel even apathetic towards, it's like, that's maybe 1% of what this show actually is. Like,
It it
it's a
has a
non-zero
good
sum game.
it has a good couple end of episode hooks and a
Yep.
couple well-directed action sequences.
And it's like, that's just not
It's not
enough to
enough.
buoy anything. Like, you can go, like, again, my immortal fictional nemesis Kishimoto. Naruto has so many good story arcs and good characters that I will defend until I die, even though overall my feelings on that show have soured to an exponential degree. I will still be like, Rock Lee still fucking rules. Like, you should watch the Chunin exam arcs for that purpose alone. Like, yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. But there's some stories where even if they have a good few things, they have to amount to something.
Right. Because when you have a story this week, a couple of interesting hooks for, ooh, what's going to happen in the next episode, it
It's
can
like,
only get you so
are these
far.
good qualities or are these lies? Like, because I'm
At some
veering
point,
towards lies.
yeah, at some point, what this decent action and a couple of good, like, oh, maybe this will lead to something, feels more like betrayals than legitimately good moments.
So on the opposite side of when, like, I feel like we are talking about something that is almost wholly vapid. And then my recommendation from you this week, which is something that is so self-conscious and so loaded and so dense with what it's trying to do and say and how like well plotted it is. So, Jen, why don't you tell everyone what exactly you had in mind when you recommended to me the AMC drama Kevin Can Fuck Himself, the 2 seasons that I'm guessing because I think the last season was in 2023 that this is not getting a third season.
Oh no, it's not.
Mm, more on that later.
Okay. Uh, so Kevin Can Fuck Himself is like I said, it's an AMC drama, came out in 2021. It is basically a genre study of sitcoms.
Hmm.
How this came to be is the creator, whose name is Valerie Armstrong, was inspired by something that happened during the production of the Kevin James vehicle Kevin Can Wait. So, in between seasons of that show, so that show for Kevin James, after like a long time where he was just doing movies, because he had done The
Hmm.
King of Queens and that had been over for a long time, he
Yeah.
wanted to come back and do another like lead vehicle TV show. And so it's just about, I don't even know what that fucking show is about. He's there, he's got a wife, things happen. Uh, it's not very notable
Yeah.
until what happens in between seasons of that show is they end up writing the wife character out of the show and bringing back his co-star from The King of Queens, Leah Remini, as a new scene partner and potential love interest for the character.
Hmm.
So the second season starts and his character's wife is dead. And Leah Remini
Oh.
comes into the picture because she is his new coworker, I think is how they introduce her to the plot, or his new neighbor or something. It's very strange. And this caused a lot of controversy because it raised a lot of legitimately great criticism about how sitcom storylines treat the women that are at its center. You know, a
Hmm.
lot of sitcoms are frankly rooted in old fashioned misogyny and are rooted in a lot of masculine ideals about domesticity and the nuclear family and such. And so Valerie Armstrong was thinking about all this when she came up with the idea for Kevin Can Fuck Himself, which is a comedy drama about a woman who decides to take the lead in her own life. She feels repressed by the overwhelming, boisterous, overpowering presence that her husband, Kevin, has in her life. She doesn't have a lot of independence. She doesn't have a job when the plot of the show starts. And so she eventually decides that she's fed up with Kevin's antics and hatches a plan to kill him. How this is all presented is that whenever the character of Kevin, who's played by Eric Peterson, is on screen, the show is presented as a typical multi-camera sitcom
Sitcom.
with very gauche production design that lends itself well to the kind of blocking that sitcoms need to make its images work. And it's accompanied with, canned laughter and again, that multi camera setup. But then when Kevin is not on screen and Allison is by herself, the show takes on a different kind of visual identity. It takes
Hmm.
on the form of a single camera drama similar to what you would see with shows like Breaking Bad.
Hmm.
And it uses this back and forth to juxtapose the presence of Kevin in all of these other characters' lives, because there are other characters that Kevin interacts with in these sitcom sequences, and the way that Allison exists in this world that their marriage has created for the both of them.
Hmm.
And so, Jake, what did you think about how this show starts? I specifically want to talk about the first time that we see that shift. Did you
Yes,
know that it was going to do that? Did you have that spoiled
um
for you?
no, honestly, like expectation wise, I just knew that this was a sort of sitcom style show where it was trying to like it had like a meta slant to it where it was going to there was going to be some more like interiority. Like the best way to sell this show is that it's like a sitcom, but it also shows you what happens when the characters who aren't immediately on screen are doing something else. Like it's showing the interiority beyond what you see in the multicam setup. And expectations wise, I think this show sets a great precedent because the first time this does happen, like the first scene of the show, this is like it's such a beautiful, elegant little visual trick that this does that conveys to you exactly what this is going to be and what it's going to be like is that it just kind of opens and it does the sort of like the establishing shot of the house with the little music cue over it, and it does the yeah it does the da, 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 with a little drum beat, and it's like it does the setup that's very similar to what you've seen in various sitcoms. And I gotta say, going into this, I'm not like the
How much of a
most
sitcom
well.
guy are you actually?
Well, that's the thing. I kind of am. Is that I was raised in a household that was very sitcom centric. Like my mom watched a lot of stuff that like I watched as early on as I was watching Law and Order. I was also watching shows like Frasier. I was also watching shows like Will and Grace. And like frankly, I still get a lot of enjoyment out of shows like that. Like Frasier, great show. I'll put that on, have a nice little time. I like the atmosphere of shows like that, and also I think a lot of the writing is genuinely actually like good and solid. I've also watched a bunch of other sitcoms, and frankly, I have sampled a lot of them because I grew up in the cable TV era and I had channels like TBS. And you want to know something? There's a select few sitcoms that I grew up watching that are just sort of not watching, or just kind of on, in the way that
Yeah.
shows are on for background noise. But like, there's two sitcoms that I remember that my mom would have on occasionally that I just gave me awful vibes. Just like I just didn't like watching them, and I could never pinpoint why. And want to know what they were? The King of Queens and Everybody Loves Raymond. Watching those shows, and again,
I
it was
love that you chose those because I've seen probably every episode of Everybody Loves Raymond on TV Land.
yep, yep. And like I couldn't articulate why, but now I look back and I'm just like, oh, it's because like 90% of the comedies in these shows are just born out of the characters being genuinely unpleasant people. Like
No,
everybody loves
comedy is based on misery.
Shut up, Doug. Like the thing with like Everybody Loves Raymond in particular was one that really always got me because it's like it's kind of like a reversal of this show in a way, because it's just like Raymond is this very like he's kind of oafish and he's not like great or anything, but it's like every presence in this show is so fucking hostile and so just like immediately like it's you're just watching people be mean with canned laughter. And King of Queens was the same thing, where I was just like, it was, a very popular thing is to just be like, why do all of these oafish, lame, stupid sitcom main characters have these hot wives? Like George Lopez, also the that has the thing with the like, oh, he's kind of like a dumb sort of oafish character who doesn't really care all that much about the people around him, but his wife is this fucking intelligent, funny bombshell character who is constantly made miserable by everyone else in the show.
I
So
will say
like I
Everybody Loves Raymond is probably the best version of this dynamic. I think those two are cast very well. This is not a
oh
review of
yeah.
Everybody Loves Raymond, but that's the best
Yeah.
example of it to me of like a realistic couple in a show like this.
And like and basically it primed me to be really receptive to what this show is putting down, because you get that setup and it does that little, like I one of the things that I have to compliment the show on is that it very much understands sitcoms. Like when it is doing the sitcom bit, the jokes are like half of them pretty funny. Half of them fall flat kind of intentionally because they're kind of telling you something about the characters. But like it
Yeah.
is very like the best way I can say this, if you cut every sitcom scene in this show, put it all together in one thing, and showed it to somebody who had no idea, they would never predict that this is some like weird interior deconstructionist take on what these shows are. You would just watch that and be like, yeah, this is a sitcom. Like there is almost nothing about this that lets you in. And I feel like that's really smart. It helps the contrast a lot, so that when you have the moment where she leaves the room and the camera angle is like this fisheye lens of this room, and this lighting is super dark and contrast heavy, and you hear that big ringing noise, and she kind of walks toward the camera and sets like the laundry basket down, and she's just kind of sitting there and just like basically having kind of like a small panic attack, and you're just like, I get it. I know what the show is going to be. You understand, and like it will gradually, like whenever Kevin comes into frame, the show edits split second, it will suddenly be a sitcom. He will leave, it will suddenly change back to a drama. And the first thing I really want to compliment this show on is I think that this show's introduction to its concept, particularly in its first 2 episodes, is remarkably well executed. Because not only do we have a really well realized sitcom visual style, but the visual style of the drama parts of the show. I love how when she leaves the house, everything in this town that she lives in, which is mainly where this all takes place, everything is framed as hostile. The buildings are all tall and big and dark and empty looking. Like this is by and large a miserable place to live. Like it's this New England town that's
Worcester,
just kind of
baby.
worst, like literally has worst in the fucking title, and like lives up to that. And you go and you see that our main character, who is the sort of sitcom wife, Allison, she is walking around town, and you discover she does not really have much of a life here. She does not really have any friends. She works part-time at a liquor store owned by her aunt, who is also a main character. And all of the characters in this show are sitcom archetypes. Like there is, her neighbors are this sibling pair, that like one of them is the rough, kind of crass, comedic
Comedic
girl.
sidekick.
Yes, a comedic sidekick character. And then there is the oafish idiot character who is Kevin's best friend, Neil. And you have, other characters who will come in, and they always kind of embody a specific sitcom archetype.
Kevin's
And
dad, I felt, was a great throwback
Kevin,
to everybody, to the character
yeah,
Frank on Everybody Loves
the
Raymond.
the ornery character who's just kind of like, and King of Queens too, like the older guy who's just kind of like there as like kind of a Greek chorus of sorts. And it's just like you see her walk around this town that's just like by and large kind of shitty, and she just has a very unfulfilling life. Like this is a classic AMC drama in that respect, and that like it begins kind of like Breaking Bad does, in that you have Walter White and you see what his day-to-day existence is, and frankly it kind of sucks. You immediately empathize with your main character because they exist within a system or an environment that does not care for them or is actively hostile towards them. And in this first episode, she kind of gradually has a bit of a spiral, because whenever Kevin is present, the sitcom element is there, but it's also what the show teaches you is that the framing of the sitcom, the elevated tone masks like a legitimately deep sociopathy within some of these characters. Because, like, if you, like, the whole time you're watching the show up until the very end of season 2, you're like, if this show took away the sitcom thing and just showed Kevin being the way he was, but without that elevated tone, you like he already sucks. Like Kevin is an idiot. He's crass. He's self-absorbed. He has no redeeming qualities as a character, but not in a way that makes him feel like he's shallow. Like he is an end product of a society that is completely ambivalent to people like him and thus allows people like him to exist. It's like there is
Yeah.
no legitimate form of karmic punishment that exists for people like Kevin
He's
because
a
he
normal
can.
guy who likes normal things, who
Mhm.
thinks he can do whatever he want as long as it's not like an actual crime.
And yeah, like, and he gets up to antics and stuff and schemes and what have you that, that are charming and that have like these episode premises. But you're sitting there and you're like, from Allison's perspective, it's just like, dude, fuck you. Like you know, you're with her when she ultimately does come to the conclusion that this dude needs to die. I
Yeah, because I
think
mean, the
the
first episode is all about their 10th anniversary and her
and
wanting to do something different and him just wanting to throw a big party and get drunk with all the
mm,
bros and not celebrate with her.
literally segmenting her to a different part of the house where he can have the party in another room. And he's also, and not to mention, she also basically finds out that he has blown their entire life savings that they could potentially use to move away from this town, like expresses the desire to, because he spends money exorbitantly on sports memorabilia that he does nothing with, because he buys a $10,000 Bill Belichick hoodie because that's the kind of thing that somebody like him would do. And Allison spirals. Like this just kind of sends her like, and she just kind of leaves. And like ultimately, like they do talk about getting a new house together, and he initially like agrees, but he's lying. Like he has already spent the money and has no intention of fulfilling the promise of moving whatsoever because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about anybody in his life other than himself. And Allison basically goes and talks to this side character who's like a fucking mechanic and gets all hopped up on coke. And like the thing about Allison that is the most like identifiable thing, it's just that she's lonely. Like she is a lonely person, and because of that loneliness, because she has been with Kevin for 15 years, she doesn't know how to talk to people anymore. She has been in this marriage for so long that she never had anyone in her orbit to be social with to begin with. Even like the crass best friend neighbor character, she doesn't like her at first. Like her and Patty don't really actually get along. It's episode like 3 or 4 where Patty like literally turns to her and is like, "I'm only just now realizing that I like you." And
Yeah.
that and for the
And that's a
record too,
great narrative beat for them.
that is one of the things like I first want to compliment the show on is that like, well, firstly, I uniformly love this show's cast of characters that it chooses to focus on, namely like even characters who I was like, these people, like some of these characters exist just to be their sitcom archetypes, and I'm not sure how I feel about them. And then in season 2 they get a lot more development, like Neil is a character who in season 1 is very static and I'm just kind of like,
Neil's the secret
whatever.
weapon
and
of the midpoint of
and
this show.
season 2 comes in and you see that there's way more to him than just being this oafish idiot sidekick. And like the best part of the show to me is the relationship between Patty and Allison. Like Patty and
Yes.
Allison, like Patty in particular is my favorite character in this show. I love Patty. She is this character who is rough around the edges, and but you slowly discover is like she is in her own form of social entropy. She's with this guy who she lives with, who is just like she's with him because he's stable. She's with him because he is everything that a partner is supposed to be on paper. Not because they like each other, have chemistry, or like are really interested in one
Just
another,
because they're
but
nice and they get along and their
they
personalities
they
generally
have
mesh, but they have no
yeah,
passion for one another.
they have functional utility together and nothing beyond that. They have interactions where they're sitting there eating dinner together, and it's like there is a cringe comedy element to this show where there are times where these relationships between characters, you're just sitting there like, oh, get out of that room, man. Get out of that room. You want them to just break away. And ultimately, Patty does realize that like she breaks up with him because it's just like I can't really do this anymore. Like this he basically proposes to her after they're like on the side of the road after a pharmacy gets raided by the police because it turns out that Patty is actually selling OxyContin to people in this town. Like she has kind of a drug thing going on the side,
Yeah.
just for extra cash and what have you. And this plays into sort of the main plot of them finding someone to pay off to kill Kevin. Ultimately, is what like the show's first season builds to the climax of. But it's really about Patty and Allison coming out of their shells, realizing who they are, and having banter with one another. Like the episode where they go and drive to Vermont in order to like get all of this stuff situated is a really great little moment for these characters because the interactions between them in the car are like really it's really charming. They have moments together that are like legitimately very quiet, very understated, but very emotional. And I was really into that. And I was like, there was something about this female relationship that I found like really refreshingly portrayed. Like it was just one of those things that I feel like you don't often see in TV, and that they don't have like a completely healthy dynamic. They're both very damaged people. Like one of the things I was afraid of going into this show is that like you read what this is on paper and you kind of think that this show is in danger of kind of girl bossing Allison to some
No,
extent. No,
no.
Allison's a
And
disaster.
Allison and Patty have friction pretty much throughout the entire plot
Oh yeah,
in
on
some
an
way, shape, or
episode by
form.
episode basis, they are like they will have an argument and then they will resolve it and then they'll have another argument. Like they have a very tumultuous relationship, but it's because they're growing as people. They are understanding each other. And what I love about Patty too is that like ultimately they get embroiled in this scheme to hire someone to kill Kevin. And there's this cop that comes onto their trail a little bit, and she kind of has to obfuscate and distract this cop. And the show has many great bait and switches, but what my favorite one by far is the one where she shows like interest in talking to her, and she's getting onto her trail. She knows something. She's trying to find out more, and she's like trying to ask me questions about where I was on this day. And then they go and like they have this little like outing thing at this bar, and then it's revealed that like no, she doesn't really have a vested interest in this investigation at the moment. She actually likes Patty romantically and wants to date Patty. And at first she's like, oh, you can be like our inside man. You can be like staying on top of the investigation, what she
Yeah.
knows, and you can get information from her while pretending to date her. And that's how Patty realizes that she's gay. And
Yeah.
that's
It's
awesome.
such a brilliant arc for this season is just Patty
I
realizing that she has feelings for this other woman and like genuinely wants to try to make this relationship work despite how bad of an idea it is to
yes,
do.
I
She
love
genuinely likes this person.
and I was getting hints that that was where that they were going to go at first, like doing that, because I was just like, because Patty from the get-go, from the jump, is like immediately not averse to the idea. She's just kind of rolling with the punches. And then eventually she has this conversation that I found really kind of salient when she's talking to her. She's like, I've got cable. I know that we're like okay with this stuff now these days, but this is not something I've ever done. And like she does actually, like, the cop character does give her a little bit of space to find out that like, oh, like, I've lived my entire life as a queer woman and I understand this aspect of myself, but I'm realizing that you are just now like getting on board and you need a little bit of time because the ultimate theme of this show is stagnation. The ultimate
Yeah.
theme of these characters is that they have agency in their lives. They are just programmed and conditioned by society and the people around them to not take a hold of that agency, to not utilize that agency. Because, I mean, it even becomes kind of a talking point in season 2 where people are like, why don't you just get a divorce? And it's always hand waved. It's always like, it's long and complicated, and I don't want to deal with that. I want the easiest solution to my problem. And you understand that because it's like, yeah, trying to deal with Kevin in any context is fucking unbearable. So yeah, a divorce with this
Yeah.
man would be it'd
You've seen a
suck.
whole season of like Kevin's impossible to navigate behavior
It's
before any of the characters raise the question like why can't you just get a divorce? And
you
Allison knows like that's impossible. There's no way to talk Kevin into getting a divorce.
and
And even
Patty
if
is
you did,
also on the same wavelength.
yeah, even if you did, what is Allison gonna do after that? Like
She doesn't have a
the
job, she doesn't have a home, like there is no option for
the
her.
problem isn't just Kevin. The problem is this entire social life that being with Kevin has deprived her of. She doesn't
Yes.
know how to be a normal person who just
No,
like
she
has friends and has a job.
and that's where the style shifting comes into play because the other thing that I kind of thought about this is that I thought that this would be kind of like a I thought Allison would be self-aware thinking she was in a sitcom when I heard the premise to this show. Like I thought that that was
Ah,
going
like a
to
mental
be
projection
yeah,
sort of
like
thing.
I thought she was gonna be Frank from House of Cardsing the audience. I thought I like Mr. Robot, honestly, is
Yeah.
kind of the approach I thought it was gonna have. But instead, the kind of usage that this device has is really just a I don't want to say it's a coping mechanism, but it is a way that like you come to understand that the sitcom presentation is like the reason this exists is because it's the only context that the people in Kevin's life can use to justify his behavior. Like the elevated tone, the scheming nature of him, it's just like the only way Kevin comes off as anything other than a horrifying latent psychopath is if you put him as the main character of a sitcom. And that's
Yeah.
what it is. And that's why that device, as the show continues, kind of lessens substantially. Like in season 2, the sitcom aspect of this show's presentation is more or less kind of incidental to what it's actually doing. And there's also other characters in the show, like Sam, who's kind of an old flame of Allison's, who's kind of like he's also kind of a character who's actually more indicative of AMC dramas than he is of like he's Ted from Breaking Bad. He's
Yeah.
the stable but obviously the character who has more chemistry with like Skyler in Breaking Bad's case is that he is the guy who's like he's got his own issues. He was in AA and he's got a wife who is awful in her own right, kind of, but in like a normal, not psychopathic way. Like she's
Well,
just kind of rude.
he's got really shitty in-laws, you know,
Yeah, like
and
he's
he's just
somebody
not
who
happy either.
he has the exact same problem Allison does, in that he has more agency in his life than he probably thinks that he does, but he is a little bit more content with it than she is. It's like he has a business. It's not doing super well, but it is like he's able to go on vacations. He has more freedom. And Allison sees Sam as a window to more freedom. And sort of like that's sort of another aspect of the first season that she starts having an affair with him, like kind of rekindling that old flame. And you think that like he presents her with an out of just like we can run away together. Like I will leave my wife. We don't have to do this. And Allison backs down. And that's the first instance you get of just like Allison's real problem is not Kevin. Allison's real problem is that she does not realize, like, they even explicitly tell her a line that I really like, which is, you are in control. Like I'm pretty sure it's Sam who even says that to her when they have that kind of altercation at the end of the first season. And I feel like that's kind of feeding into the sitcom-y nature of it. If it's just like you kind of slowly begin to realize that it's like you have control not just in your own life, but how other people see you and how other people even
Yeah.
see Kevin to some extent. And it boils to a bit of a fever pitch at the end of the first season where it balances like it's very 50-50 and how like the first string of episodes are like half Allison doing her thing, half sitcom antics that are very like Kevin has an episode where he has to do a chili cook-off competition. Kevin has an episode where he invents an escape room that he designs to be impossible so that he can grift people out of money. And these instances, I will admit, these parts of season one don't work for me. The
That's fine.
reason is
Those are my least
because
favorite parts of it too.
it's because the show does such a fantastic job with Allison that I'm like, and it's just straight-laced sitcom bits. Like the worst example of it is the restaurant episode where Allison is dealing with the fact that the guy that she hired to kill Kevin is a like waiter at the restaurant. Kevin is going back and forth between
A date that they're
the
supposed to
date
be
that they're
having
supposed
at
to
the
be on
restaurant.
and a get together with Neil and his dad where they can hang out at an arcade and like play video games and shit because he's worthless. And Allison is also, and like Sam and his wife are also there. And I'm like so into the game that Allison has to play of balancing all these people and like Kevin is even the least important aspect of this episode to her. Like she is banking on the fact that he will abandon her because she wants some alone time, which is great characterization on the show's part.
Yeah.
But every time it cuts back to Kevin doing the traditional sitcom bit where he's just like talking with Neil, and there's like a bit where there's a fucking ice hockey player there that he's trying to show up to have this like eating competition with, and I'm like, I don't please get back to Allison. And
I
this
understand why you'd feel
and
that way. I think I feel that way about season one in retrospect a lot
and
too. Like Kevin's antics are just not interesting to watch. Like,
it's not
they don't
like
add to the point that the show is making.
the sitcom-y elements of Kevin don't really. It's like it tells the show is demonstrating that it understands what makes this formula work and what makes this formula appealing to people, and I appreciate that understanding of the form. Like truly I do. It just has too much emphasis. It feels like it is rooted in that because it needs to draw people into its very weird premise, and that's
Yeah.
a very digestible and understandable thing. But
I think the
season
last
two,
episode of season one rides
oh,
that line a lot better when
yes.
Kevin's comedic antics are a product of the dramatic plot, right? Because at the end of season one, spoilers, go watch the show. I love it. It's
Yeah,
great. Not many people have
you
seen it.
should go watch the show. My recommendation as well is that this is a very worthwhile piece of media.
So at the end of the first season, Kevin ends up shooting the guy. Like he gets a one up on the guy that they hire to break in and kill him. And he becomes like a local legend for stopping this. And he
Hmm.
decides to run for local office. And that's where
Hmm.
I think it rides that line the best between Kevin's antics. Because, like I said, it's a direct result of the dramatic side of the plot.
And the tonal whiplash it induces feels really intentional and skillful in this particular part of the show. And while I will say I do have that issue with season one, I will say that the way that this show is plotted is so deceptively tight and well, like the mechanisms of the characters and the information that's doled out to them and what they know and how they know it is very, very well done. Like
Hmm.
very, very well done. This show also juggles its cast really, really well. Like I walked away from that first season being like, yeah, I like every character that it explicitly focused on. I understood and liked following. Like even people like Kevin's would-be assassin gets a little bit more attention than you would expect a character like him to actually get. And like the mechanism of like the pharmacy and the drug dealing and the case, it's like it all comes together in a really smart way. In a way, it kind of like the show it reminded me the most of accents, small derelict town, weird kind of like comedic, offbeat, dark comedy tone. It reminded me of Fargo, like a lot. This feels like a season of Fargo to me, and
Okay.
I love the Fargo television show like a lot. So I was right at home with this, warts and all. But then season 2 comes along, and it ends on a hell of a cliffhanger where basically Neil, Patty's brother, the oafish kind of dumb guy character, overhears what's going on and is like, "Oh my god, you hatched a plot to kill Kevin." And Patty comes in to see Allison's basically being assaulted by Neil and then cracks him over the head, and he's just lying there, and they're like, "What are we gonna do?"
I say the stakes have risen significantly now that Neil knows what's going on and can attest to us violently attacking him.
And then they sort of do like it's very season 1 of Breaking Bad-esque, where it's like it's really contained and the drama is all about these like little chamber drama moments between characters in these small rooms having conversations about what's going on. Like initially they have to tie Neil up in the basement to figure out what the fuck they're going to do, because like you get the impression that like slowly Allison's in a bit of denial that has been building up, and like it has made her sort of overcorrect, and now she is a little bit more morally flexible in what she's willing to do to get out of Kevin's reach. And there's even a great little moment where it's sort of like, if Patty wasn't around, if Neil was not Patty's brother, I don't know. Allison may well have killed him. Like I believe that that is a distinct possibility that could have been on the table. But they ultimately, like, he's got a head injury, and Patty's like, I need to take him to the hospital, and ultimately they have a bit of friction over this element. But he is like the shooter initially is believed to be dead, but he's in a coma, so he's kind of a ticking clock set into the background of the show for like,
Yeah.
if he wakes up, you might be fucked. And like that's sort of the impression season 2. Like season 2 is balancing its tone on a razor's edge, because you're constantly like, oh man, this could all collapse at any moment, because you have Neil, who once he comes to is weirdly kind of disillusioned with what's going on, because what season 2 does brilliantly with him is that you slowly find out that Neil's oafish stupidity is mainly a guise, because he is in the same spot that all of these other characters are in that he has socially stagnated, has no real friends, does not know how to talk to people, and to some extent like is not even really willing to learn how to communicate like people like Patty and Allison are, because he's just so stunted because of stuff that happened with like Patty and him's like abusive parents and shit when them growing up. And he lives with her, and like he's slowly realizing that Kevin treats him like garbage. Like he allows himself to be treated like garbage to have a semblance of companionship. And it actually
Yeah.
makes season 1's portrayal of him in retrospect as like this guy who is so desperate for friendship that he just flagellates himself to be an idiot dumbass for Kevin, because like he like genuinely wants to care for him and be his best friend, but he is slowly realizing that Kevin does not care about him and only keeps him around to be this second in
Yeah, he's a
command guy.
convenient, he lives next door. He's a big guy. He likes what I like. He's
Mhm.
convenient for Kevin.
Yes, he's convenient more than he is actually interesting, or just like has the alchemy of friendship, and overall has this sort of element to him where he actually ends up having this kind of unexpectedly sweet relationship with Allison's aunt, who also gets a little bit more interiority in this season as
Yes.
somebody who is having her own sort of relationship with her husband, where she gets cheated on and she decides to get a divorce and wants to break away from him, and sees Neil as a bit of an escape. But there's a disparity with their relationship where she sees Neil as a little bit more means to an end because she knows that he's not really, ambitious or wants to move past where he is in life, and she clearly does. But Neil is also like, this is the one person in my entire life that gives me affection and like is shows me any kind of like positive reinforcement. He's just this sad, wet cat of a character that ends up being like really, really charming in that respect. And I really appreciate how much depth it grants him. And like ultimately it
Mm.
kind of builds to him like everybody in this season is really doubling down on that theme of stagnation, of just all of them are making half-measured decisions when they need to be committing more. Like everyone has a fear of commitment because they don't want something to change. Like Allison pivots from, instead of wanting to kill Kevin, she wants to now fake her own death instead so that she can get away. And she's never fully committed to this idea. Like even when she's fully embroiled in this plan, when she is fully like, there's a really great episode that's almost kind of a bottle episode about her breaking in to steal some
A death certificate.
a death
Yeah.
certificate from like the local city like mortuary, and we get a guest star appearance of someone who plays her mom, of Perry Gilpin from Frasier, who plays Ross, which I was like, oh hey, I actually do
Yeah.
understand this reference. That was cool. But like she's also got this little like sort of backstory of like her father dying early on, and the overbearing nature and, well, really ambivalence of her mother is what drove her to Kevin in the first place, as somebody who did actually like show some kind of warmth to her in some regard. It's like everyone is just constantly making choices that are aimed in the right direction but never fully committing. It's like Patty
Yeah.
is gonna move in with her girlfriend, but she's kind of not really
She's not
committing to
feeling good
it.
about it. But the thing, yeah, that scene in particular, I wanted to point out. Season 2, episode 3, you get the scene at the end of that episode where you get a flashback to Allison meeting Kevin, Patty, and Neil for the first time, just kind of spontaneously, because she abandons her father's funeral to go get drunk and just
Yep.
runs into him and basically just falls into his charm. And like that, I want to compliment Eric Peterson so
Yeah.
much. Like his casting is great because he's like a stage guy. He played the
Mhm.
original Shrek and Shrek the Musical.
That's who
He's like a
he
musical
is.
theater guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He really is like, he's got to nail that, that specific sitcom guy tone of being like, he's basically a human cartoon character.
Yeah.
But also
He's a
there
little
is
bit
an
he's a little bit
underlying,
wall-eyed, but
there's
that
a
scene
there's a
where he meets
cruelty to
him.
him too that he nails.
Yeah, but that scene where he meets him, he's legitimately charming and he's listening to her and he's trying to ease the pain that she's going through. You and it's nuanced enough that the audience isn't immediately led to believe that, like, oh, Kevin sees this as a person that he can manipulate. Like, no,
Hmm.
Kevin isn't thinking that far ahead.
Like
Kevin just sees a hot girl.
manipulation is only a part of Kevin insofar as it's just the way he deals with problems. He's not like outwardly insidious in that way, but he's just somebody who can never do anything other than make something about him. Like that generator episode where they're all stuck in Sam's diner is just him making every problem around him. And that's another thing I love about this season of TV, is that Allison kind of figures out that there would be kind of a way for her to make it work with staying with Kevin, in that she solves her problems by as she puts it, making her problems Kevin's problems, because she's noticed that Kevin, this character who kind of like Kevin
Kevin is
moves,
good at solving his own
well,
problems.
because the world around him almost makes it so. It's like Kevin has the same relationship to this show that Patrick Bateman does in American Psycho, where like no matter what unhinged fucking behavior he gets up to, nobody reacts to it like a normal person. Like he can literally go out and commit murder and the world moves itself so that he does not get arrested or punished for what he's doing. Like, Kevin can literally be responsible for a citywide power outage because of arson and try to attack his neighbors and set their lawn on fire, and nothing will happen to him because nothing happens to characters like this. It's the stagnation theme comes in with the form of the show, in that sitcoms, what are they built around? They are built around the status quo being unable to be changed. Like, it is the
Yeah.
multicam setup, like it is built into the DNA that everything must reset. There is no way that these characters, like, that's why the
Because that's not how shows
reeler,
like this are written, right?
yeah,
Shows like this only very sparsely allow short-term consequences for
like,
anything.
and even then, like, I think of a show like Frasier, which in its final 3 seasons actually does a really good job at doing this, where like there's a marriage that breaks up that basically sets these characters on this like really kind of long overarching pathway, and they actually have this will they won't they romance with these two characters that they've had for like 8 seasons that they finally commit to, and they actually come together and have like, and it's like that is not the norm of these at all. Like, they
No.
just don't have moments where, there are the most that these shows will do is they'll have the moment where the audience goes, oh, like they'll
Well, yeah,
react to
and
be
it's
like,
like there are three things that happen in every sitcom that actually changes the status quo.
mm-hmm.
Somebody gets married, somebody
Yep,
dies,
yep,
somebody breaks up or gets a
yep,
divorce, right?
yep.
That's it. That's all you can do to change the status quo because that's what people want to see in one way or another.
And the best part about season 2 is that it characterizes everyone really well. It also gives Sam a lot more interiority. He ends up breaking up with his wife and has to live in his
He ends
little
up living in
diner
the
that he's
back
got
of his
set
own
up.
diner.
Yeah, and like he's somebody who, like, he's definitely a leg up in all of these characters, but he's also somebody who just kind of surrenders himself to life and doesn't really take much initiative in anything. But like, what the show is great at doing is that you really do just want the best for these people. Like, you
Yeah, and
want
like
them to be
Sam
able to
Sam
move
is
on.
interesting. Sam is interesting because it's clear like his stagnation is a product of his improvements in his confidence in himself, in his
Yes,
own self-control,
he's an
even when he's left his
alcoholic who
wife,
has
right?
earned this life and does not want to piss it away because he fought hard to get there.
Yeah, like he knows he had to work for the state that he's in, and he has to work continuously even after he leaves his wife to like, he's still clocking in every day at the diner. He still wants to, see Allison, but he ultimately comes to terms with the fact that that's not gonna happen,
Hmm.
and that he was wrong for wanting it too as badly as he did once he realizes the full extent of what she's been up to.
And like, ultimately you want Neil to really like seize the moment and actually, like, kickstart his life again. You want to see Patty be able to commit to her relationship with her girlfriend and be able to move out, because it is what she wants. She's just kind of stubbornly holding on to what she knows because that's it. Again, it's something that, like, because of her background with her brother, she views her life as a product of struggle that she does not want to piss away in a moment of weakness. Like, that's how she views it. And you want Allison to get away from Kevin. And like, there just all of these characters, they are so close to reaching this kind of, this moment, this raison d'etre with themselves,
Mhm.
but there's constant inconveniences. And there's also kind of like, with this season in particular, it starts doing something really interesting where it relents on the sitcom stuff a bit. And I will admit, it still has enough of the sitcom stuff to the point where it actually works for me a little less in this season than it even did before, just because it's like, it's again, it feels it feels like a bridge that's meant to be crossed in order to get to where they want to go with these characters. Like,
Yeah.
it really feels like the sitcom element is something that just, it doesn't really matter much anymore until the end. I will say there is a great thing they pull off with the ending here. but it is.
There's some episodes in
And
season 2 that handle this better than others, and I
well,
said the same thing about season 1, right? The citywide
there's
blackout
there yeah.
episode handles its comedic situation really well. The surprise party for Patty handles it really well, just because
Yes.
more characters' relationships are at stake than just Kevin's
Yes.
antics.
And the one episode I really like is the episode Unreliable Narrator, where there is like maybe the least amount of sitcom stuff in season 2 as a whole, but there's always problems that are occurring in this narrative, and you find out all of them are being caused by Kevin. Like
Yeah.
he makes a joke. A really subtle little bit of information is that he makes a joke at the start of the episode where he's just like, my arch nemesis, the stop sign at the intersection between whatever and whatever. And there's a scene where Patty and Allison are driving, and I gotta give props. I did not see this coming, and I pride myself on my ability to be able to call when car crashes happen in shows like this, because they always frame it in a specific way, and they're driving down the road and they get fucking T-boned, and then you find out it was because Kevin took the stop sign away. And the way it frames Kevin in this episode is like this unseen force that's just
He's
doing
like this
shit.
trickster god.
Yeah, he's like fucking Loki. He's just doing shit, and it reverberates in horrible ways for other people, just absolutely making them completely fucking miserable. Like Neil in particular just keeps getting shafted by Kevin in this season, and he wants to, like, he doesn't tell anybody anything, because like the one of the best scenes in the entire thing is when he has a confrontation with Allison after being drunk at a bar, and he's just like, it doesn't matter if I tell people that you tried to kill him. I did tell people that you tried to kill him. They don't fucking believe me because I'm nothing. They don't believe me because they don't care about me. They don't take stock in anything I say.
Best line delivery in the show, no shot, is Kevin just laughed. Like, but I'm obviously not delivering it with the same cadence, but just the way that Neil says with such like defeat.
There's pain.
Kevin,
there's pain
laugh.
in this man's voice. It's like it's legitimately like everybody is batting 1,000 performance wise, and it really does all kind of build to a fever pitch where ultimately Patty's girlfriend does kind of catch on to what's going on, and is like, and isn't even like immediately like, I'm gonna like report you or whatever. You find out that she's got baggage. Like, she, as like a female cop, like she got treated like dog shit by her coworkers and essentially got forced into covering up for her partner, who was a piece of shit, who kind of hated her, who was like a racist asshole, who dies, and she's just like, I don't even care. But I am literally like, if I am a cop in this town, I'm never, like, my career is never going to advance because all of these people know this about me and look down on me because of what happened. And he's not even here to answer for what he did. And like, so she's like, I've got baggage and shit, but she's just like, I don't really care about the illegal shit. I cared that, you know, you lied to me. Like, that's what's the important part here. And so everything's sort of building. And then ultimately, like in the penultimate episode, Allison does end up faking her death successfully. She goes away, and like her and Patty have this sort of final goodbye, and like it sort of cuts forward in time 6 months, and you see how everybody is living, and they have taken hold of all of their half measures. You know, like everybody has moved forward, but they haven't moved forward enough. Like Patty and her girlfriend are living together, but they want to move. But
yeah,
Tammy
wants to move. Patty doesn't want to move because Patty likes Worcester, and Tammy wants a better career. Like, they are at an impasse. Neil is at an impasse with Kevin because of all the shit that he's been going through.
And with Allison's aunt as well, who is somebody who's just like, yeah, I'm getting divorced from Chuck, but at the same time, it's just like, you're not really like you don't have a life to marry to mine. Like, you need to be your own person before we start this, man. And Neil doesn't really know how to take that step yet. He's still just kind of existing in this sort of purgatorial state. And like, you know, Sam is kind of in the same place of that, like, he's got a hold of his business now that he's you know, away from his shitty in-laws, and Kevin has found somebody else. Like, Kevin just like latched on to the nearest available manipulated white woman who he could find.
The last moment of genius that this show does. That character is played by the actress who plays Kevin James's fucking wife on Kevin Can Wait.
Oh,
They
that's
called
so
her up
good.
to
That's
play this
so
character.
good. Wow.
It's
Wow.
genius, man.
It's and I love that she just kind of pieces. Like she is even able to read the room at the very end of all of this, and it's just like, I'm out, peace. And ultimately, Allison does come back. She like realizes like I am running away from my problems rather than actually solving them. And so she comes back, and Kevin's like, "Oh my God, you're back! Like, haha, my other girlfriend left
You
me,
get
so
the
now I can."
full, oh,
Yeah.
oh.
And then she says, "I want a divorce." And then the moment you've been waiting for this entire show, the curtain is pulled back and the sitcom
You hear that
disappears.
ringing sound that
The
you hear every
ringing,
time that the intro plays. The canned
and
laughter moves into
for
the
the
like ringing.
first time, you see Kevin without the sitcom. He is just there, and it's been in your head the whole time. Like you've been set. It's like I said, if he was presented without this framing, he would be monstrous. He would be
Yeah.
horrible, and that's
And you spend
exactly
long
what
enough
he is.
and you spend long enough watching the show wondering if they're gonna do it or not.
Yeah, it's just like it is totally a step that you want this show to take,
It's a
and
perfect Chekhov's gun, right? Where the
ultimately,
shift itself ultimately raises the question of will Kevin will they break that mold that they've
mhm,
set where the rule is that when Kevin is in the room it's like this and when Kevin is not in the room it's like this.
yep.
And then they do.
And now that it is, and like again, Peterson performance wise, like he has not, like the darkness of his character was all implied. It was all stuff you have to put together for yourself. And he does a fantastic job at the 11th hour of just manifesting the insidious toxicity of Kevin and the just controlling, domineering presence that he actually is. And you're just like, if there was ever any doubt you had that Allison had to get out of there, this moment here where he, I mean, nearly assaults her, you're just like, oh yeah, this is scary. Like this entire facade was invented as a coping mechanism by the people in his life in order to not view him as the monster that he is. And she bails, and Kevin sets the whole house on fire, sets her passport on fire, trash cans on fire, and then the whole house burns down, and she comes back, and her and Patty watch as the house burns. And it's like it's a perfect little grace note for the season. It's just like this is exactly how you want all of these threads to culminate into. And
So what's your problem with the ending?
that's why it sucks that it feels like this show is so designed around the fact that it needs one more season. Like it feels like one more season
Mm.
will wrap up all of these characters into where they are going, because it feels like it stops mid-sentence for everybody. Like the direction that they might be aimed at, but there's just no resolution to it. And again, the show does such a great job at getting you to care that I'm like, oh, I want that resolution. Even if it ends up being tragic, I want to see what happens. And it's like, oh, this is one of those instances of a good show just being lost amidst the wave of streaming that just probably didn't get enough attention to be able to fulfill its entire potential. The
I don't
Netflix
even
curse.
know. I don't even know that they wanted to make another season after the death of Kevin. Like, I think this is just how they wanted it to go out.
It feels to me like there is still stuff that needs to be wrapped up. Like it feels, again, it's like it's positioned in all of the play. It's the closest thing I can think to like ending wise is like I fucking hate doing this, but like it's like The Last Jedi. That is a movie that does all of its thematic legwork and then positions all of its characters, aiming them at a specific place, and it's like the next thing, hopefully, will just be resolving these tensions. But we never really got that. And in
Well,
this case, it's a different instance. And it's like, oh,
I
I
disagree. I disagree slightly because I mean,
I understand.
this show is all about sitcom characters breaking out of the form, and that means
Mhm.
different things for different people, right? The only character at this point that doesn't appear outside of the sitcom bits is Kevin's fucking dad, and who gives a shit about that
And
guy?
yeah,
Like,
like there are some characters like I like Kevin's dad's girlfriend who is brought in to be a one-note joke of wow, her laugh is really annoying, and it's like, okay, sure.
that's the one character where I feel like it's losing any kind of sense of meta narrative
And
commentary, and it just
see,
thinks they can make a funny joke. But
and
that's
that's
kind of how I
another
feel about Kevin's dad too, right?
well,
There's
and that's
no
another
complexity to that character for a reason. And I feel like if you spent too much time on Kevin's dad, it would just be a distraction.
I understand that. However, it feeds into my complaint in the respect that, like, I feel like that's potential, like they mine with Neil, and that you can take characters in this format that you didn't think anything of and then make them into the most pivotal points of the show.
Yeah.
And I feel like another season could have really extrapolated on that. You could have given definite, like, there is actually a lot that you could do with Kevin's dad because it's like, they're constantly joking about the dude dying. They're constantly like, he is, as many respects, as disposable as somebody like Neil is. Like, I feel like you could really lean into the sort of encroaching fear of mortality that somebody like him might have. And that, he latches on to people like his annoying girlfriend because that's the best he can get in his circumstance. Like, there is something there. There is
No,
real
I
potential
see I
there.
see where you're coming from. Part of me though just appreciates the brevity of this plot of
No,
like
that I understand
you
too.
can only put off the one thing that everyone wants to see happen so long before everyone gets annoyed with everything
And
else that's going on.
you and I in particular, I know that we enjoy like shows that know they're supposed to be 2 to 4 seasons long. Like shows that know when to end themselves. And again,
Yeah.
this is an ending that I think works well enough, but nonetheless, it's like, again, I hate to throw it back to this, but it's like Mr. Robot really spoiled me in the sense that it's a critically acclaimed show that's in this kind of same self-aware, self-conscious sort of sphere that also got like that just we had a creative that we just let do whatever form challenging bullshit that he wanted to do, and he somehow got away with making all of Mr. Robot in its batshit insane swings it takes in seasons 3 and 4 and ties it up in the perfect little bow. And like, it's not that I wanted exactly that, but it's just that I wish every show was given the room to breathe that one was. But it's like shows like this and shows like Kevin Can Fuck Himself are like, they are all so good enough and form challenging enough to get an initial pull, but not necessarily to live out to their full potential lifespan. And that
Yeah, like
sucks about this era of streaming, man, because this happens with so many good shows.
it sucks that the show actually like it lost a lot of its viewers between season 1 and
Yeah.
2. I'm looking at the ratings right now. But at the same time, I can't prove this, but I'm sure that they knew they were gonna have to run this out of its tracks
It's
before
one of
they
those
got canceled.
instances, like, to me the ending feels like the creative team were like, we literally don't know if we're going to get a third season, so we will leave enough open so that if we do, we can keep going,
Just do
but we
some
have
insane
to.
shit where Kevin actually survived somehow.
Yeah, I mean, like, and you know what? They could pull that off because of how fucking ridiculous sitcoms end up being with that bullshit of just like, oh, he miraculously survived because sitcoms are so averse to change that they will ignore literally killing their main character if they can write around it for the sake of ratings, for the sake of that. The presentation of it ends up diffusing in an interesting way. But it does kind of feel like I would have liked to have seen the sitcom element maybe utilized in a way that was a little bit less. And I say this thinking that it was well utilized, but in a way that was less one note. Its one noteness works, but I feel like it could have been expanded. And again, this all stems from me knowing what Esmail did with Elliot's narration in Mr. Robot and being like, oh wow, this is like legitimately like no other show has done something like this before. And like, I'm not saying that you always got to do that, but like I feel like this show could have really capitalized on its darkness and its penchant for very subtle dark storytelling in like another season that really leans into that. But
Yeah.
like
At the
at the
same
end of the
time, though, if you do too much to fuck with the narrative tool that is the sitcom
Mhm.
appearance to these segments, you lose a lot of the big point that the show is trying to make, right? If
Yes,
you
that's
start
true.
fucking with the formula there, you lose the overall point a little bit. I
And
definitely
I
see where
feel
you're
like
coming from, thinking that this can go in more complex places that challenges the very nature of itself.
mhm,
But I think it's satisfying because it sticks to its guns on what the original premise even is, right? Where
no.
as soon as Kevin is out of the picture, all of these characters are in a completely different phase of their lives, for better or
Mhm.
worse.
And
Most of
it
them better.
and like yeah, like at the end of the day, that is the solace that I can, walk away from the show in, is that like the characters were aimed in the right direction to be able to change. And there is something poignant about not knowing how their arcs conclude, of just being like, it's up to them now. They have taken agency in their own lives, and what they do beyond this is, it's up to them.
I
And
think it's also a
like,
great critique of sitcom endings where they try to establish some kind of forever state that's never going to be,
yes.
that's obviously never going to be addressed again. But now that we've gone through all the struggle, all these things are going to be
Yeah.
like they are forever and nothing is
And
ever going to change again. And I appreciate the note that the show settles on where, um, Allison and Patty don't feel like everything is going to be the same for them forever,
no,
but they make a
no,
promise to each other to kind of always ride it out together. And the ambiguity with Neil makes a similar promise that the potential future for these characters is wider than what their potential present ever was, which is what the entire show is about.
precisely. Yeah, like its ambiguity is not a net negative by any means. Like it is certainly like I can see many people walking away from this show's ending without the problems that I have remotely. Like
I
don't let
didn't.
that
Like, I didn't
discourage
have that
you
problem at all. I
from
said,
yeah,
okay, that was
yeah,
great.
like
Story's over.
don't let my reservations with it. And I probably didn't do a good job at like I really do think this show's interpersonal character writing is like the best of the best. Like I think it is some of the best, prestige drama TV writing, purely because of how subtle it is. Purely because it leaves the audience, like it lets you sift through it in a way that it knows it trusts you, in ways that sitcoms do not trust their audiences. Like, what's the trademark of the sitcom? The canned laughter that is subliminally encouraging you to laugh even though something might not be funny. Like, sitcoms are a form of media that have metastasized into their own thing, where it feels like the functional utility of the medium doesn't really do much anymore and only exists because that's how they have always existed. And it's very like it's very stagnant, and I like how this counters that. But I also like, at this point in my life, I'm seeing a lot of the stuff that Allison and Patty are seeing in themselves and other people, just in like, I'm seeing a lot of people I used to know a long time ago settle into lives that I don't want to be judgmental or nothing, but it's just like, I feel like I'm watching a lot of people I used to care for give up. And that's a really, really difficult thing to like. This show captures that feeling of seeing people like just the idea of marriage in general in the modern day and especially in America is such a like there's still such a stigma around things like divorce and such a stigma around like, you got to stay with your toxic partner for the kids and like all of this shit. And it's like I hate that because it's just like again, as a child of divorce, divorce is a good thing. If you should probably get divorced if it's something you think about often enough, frankly. Like I would be a worse person if my parents stayed together. And like seeing that echoed into people that I grew up with, oh, it's demoralizing, man. Like this show has an ennui to it that's
Hmm.
real sharp, real poignant.
Ennui's the
And
name of the game for Allison, right?
oh, for sure. And the fact that it is able to elevate her without also like deifying her. Again, it's very similar to the treatment of Elliot and Mr. Robot, where it feels deconstructionist to a point where it's also like, yeah, this person has all of these things about them that position them against the powers that be, but like make no mistake, they're fucked up. Like they have a lot wrong with them that they need to sort through and work on and make themselves better people. Like they don't deserve a happy ending just because the world is evil. Like they gotta do the work
Yeah.
for themselves and they have to discover what they need to do and they need to take those steps. So like I my this is one of those moments where in my evaluation of the show, it's gonna sound and my listen to my words, not my score, is what I'm saying here for
Sure.
people. And that like at the end of the day, since we don't do half stars, I this to me is a 3 out of 5 just because of there are things about this that do hold it back for me. I would probably on a rating scale divorced from this show, it would probably get like an 8. It would probably get like an 8, maybe even an 8.5 if I got to get real freaky with it and throw in some decimal points. But like I regardless of my issues with it, this is one of the most interesting and form challenging pieces of American television that I've seen in like the last 10 years. Like, you owe it to yourself. If this is any of this shit even sounds interesting to you, you have to go watch this show. You have to go seek this out because it is so much more than an AMC drama with a gimmick. It has a lot to say, and it boils down to the fact that its cast of characters is incredibly well realized, likable, and superbly acted.
All right. Hell yeah. Let's get the scores on the screen. Right now, it's looking like you with 11, me with 13. So, let's
The
talk
gap is
about what
closing.
let's talk about what we're gonna do next time.
It's punishment time!
Why don't I start? Because I think you went first last time.
Yeah, the cycle
Um,
of revenge has begun on this show. The we're really getting into the
okay.
second arc of this series is getting darker tonally.
So I have two things. One of which I'm just gonna throw without any precedent because I don't even know if you've seen it or not. And if you haven't, and if you have, I'm just gonna gloss over it and go to the thing that I know that you haven't seen.
Hmm.
But you're gonna hate me when I bring it up either way. Have you seen the Netflix Cowboy Bebop show?
No.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Get
That's
that
it.
Yoko Kanno music out of your mouth.
All
Ah.
right. I don't even need to
Ah,
set a
fuck.
precedent for why this is going to be miserable. So, what are you going to
Fuck.
throw back at me?
Fuck. All right. Well, okay. So the best movie I've seen this year is I Saw the TV Glow. Made a video about that. Watched that. Uh,
Oh, wait a
very
second. We have a special cameo.
Orange Cat,
He's been in here the whole time. He's just been chilling, but now he's digging around.
an off-screen sitcom character,
Yeah, an off-screen sitcom
guest
character,
starring.
Chicken Katsu.
So the best movie I watched this year was I Saw the TV Glow, and the second best movie I watched this year is a little indie film that I think if I look on Letterboxd, this movie is the movie I have at 5 stars that the least amount of people have seen, which
Mm.
is reason enough to recommend it. But also because it is a canonical film to someone that we know, and it is also a member of a trilogy of films. And this will be first because I'm recommending something where I haven't seen the other 2 movies in the trilogy and will be watching for this purpose. Jen, I am recommending you Hal Hartley's Long Island trilogy, which
Ooh.
mainly is attributed to the film in the center of the trilogy, which is Trust, which is Riley's favorite movie. And we will be joined in this discussion on this show by Riley to talk about this canonical film to them. And as somebody who is a more recent lover of it, I fell in love with every aspect of this movie that I'll get into when we talk about it, but it is an example of a lot of the ennui that I feel like is in something like Kevin Can Fuck Himself is in this, and it's very much a movie that I feel like speaks to you if you're in a transitory period in your life. And the movies on either side of it are acclaimed and supposed to be good, but like I want to shed a spotlight onto this for nothing other than like the fact that the only thing preserving these movies right now is the fact that Hal Hartley sells his movies on his website. Like this doesn't like I don't think these have official like Blu-ray releases or anything. So like more people need to see these movies. I need to see these movies, give myself an excuse to do it, and it'll give us an excuse to talk about something that I know is super important to somebody who is also very, very pivotal in all of the stuff on this channel. So that will be an undertaking
Hell yeah.
paired
This
with
sounds amazing.
fucking Cowboy Bebop. Fuck!
Here's the thing that I'll say after doing this, because yes, I know, obviously this is a thing that will repulse you. However, I want to use it as a way to talk about, again, adaptation, a recurring theme on this show.
Yes.
Specificity of medium, a thing that we talk about a lot on this show. I'm not just throwing this at you because I think it's a piece of shit, right? We're
And
trying really hard to avoid. I really do think this particular iteration of this phenomena that we'll be talking about is a really interesting case with a lot of nuances to it. So I'm excited to
oh yeah.
see how we discuss it.
And Bebop in general is from an era of anime that I feel like is distinctly before all of the anime that we have talked about on this show. Like it is a seminal 90s classic, which is a bit further back than we've gone so far. So it gives us an opportunity to talk about that. And it is still also in that canon of Adult Swim, late night,
Yeah.
like I watched Cowboy Bebop every Saturday night after I watched the new episode of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. So I do have like a deep tie to that show. Like there is a reason the final I literally ended a book quoting this fucking show. So yeah, I'm invested, you might say. On the next episode of Jen and Jake's Bizarre Affray, they will be joined by a guest to determine if they can trust each other to evaluate the unbelievable truth about Cowboy Bebop. Baby! Oh,
Say bye,
precious,
Katsu.
precious child.
Bye.
Oh, there's not a thought behind those eyes. You have never thought about anything in your life. I'm jealous of you, small creature. He does not have to think about taxes.
He doesn't have to think about Netflix's Cowboy
Nope.
Bebop either.
No, he does not. No, he does not.